Chapter 719. Wuxia didn't say anything. It was as though he couldn't be bothered with Deep Flame. This Deep Flame kept finding fault with him. And no matter what he said, Deep Flame would always have his own explanation. Since both parties had different views, there was no need to argue. Let's just wait quietly for the result. From Qin Wentian's eyes, he could see a kind of obsession. It could be described as arrogance, an obsession of madness. Also, Qin Wentian's cultivation base was only at the first level of celestial phenomenon. Wuxia had always felt that Qin Wentian's perception and resistance to pressure wasn't any weaker compared to Blackpeak and Keitiani. Not only that, he was even younger. In that case, there was no reason for him to lose to Qin Wentian. Taking a step back, so what if he was defeated? A test couldn't represent everything. The talent of these people were all outstanding, but who would be able to walk further on the path of immortality? This wasn't something that could be determined by a single test. Keitiani's body glowed with a violet gold light as his ice-sealed domain expanded once again. It seemed like he could still persist for a very long time. Within Blackpeak's body, his bloodline thrummed as a terrifying blood-colored light enveloped the area. The devouring force grew even more ferocious. He tried his best to control the consumption of his astral energy, using the power of his bloodline to replace his constellation, slowing down the rate of consumption. Qin Wentian was still being suppressed by his constellation. Among the remaining four, his and Hua Taishu's cultivation bases were the weakest, but the lava beasts they faced were also weaker. Hence, the rate of consumption was relatively balanced. However, Qin Wentian's advantage of having 5 Yuanfu was fully unleashed, allowing him to endure even more exhaustion. Time flowed by. The remaining 4 continued to challenge their limits, reaching an unimaginable level. At this moment, Blackpeak's entire body seemed to have transformed into a dark abyss as his bloodline thrummed frenziedly. Upon seeing this scene, the countenances of the spectators all froze. Seems like Blackpeak wouldn't be able to persist for much longer. In the illusionscape Hua Taishu was in, the constellation he created also seemed to be fluctuating. Over at Keitiani's side, his violet gold constellation shone resplendently. At this instant, a terrifying energy gushed forth from his body as a cold moon enveloped him within, as though he was in the midst of a cold moon. Keitiani has not reached his limit yet. The spectators mused silently. At this moment, Blackpeak and Hua Taishu both exited the illusionscape created by the myriad incarnations Immortal King. When they stood on the mountain peak, they discovered that there were still 2 more participants who had yet to exit. Their eyes couldn't help but flash with bewilderment. This was especially so for Blackpeak. He was aiming to be the first to ascend the 9th mountain. But this time around, it seemed that he had failed. Only 2 left. Only Qin Wentian and Keitiani were still persisting. This caused countless people in the royal sacred region to sigh in their hearts. It was yet another genius who could dazzle this era. When he contended against the geniuses of the immortal realms, he was still trying his best to be the most dazzling. At this time, the others should be almost done. However, I want to show them how long I can last. Keitiani slowly spoke. After that, numerous crescent moons appeared, wrapping him within. Above these crescent moons, streams of freezing air flowed down. The lava beasts roared as they rushed forward, but the moment they came close, they were instantly sealed in ice. Qin Wentian could also sense that his Yuanfu was on the verge of exhaustion. He mused silently in his heart as he chanted an incantation. Streams of white runic light shone brilliantly, illuminating his entire body. Resplendent runes could be seen on his body as the white chi flowed about, resembling wisps of white candlelight. The fiery light seemed very weak, but as Qin Wentian chanted the incantation, that seemingly weak fiery light erupted forth with a might that incinerated all the lava beasts that got too close to him into nothingness. What ability is this? The incantation he chanted actually has such might? The countenances of the spectators froze. This Qin Wentian was actually able to persist until now. He was truly powerful. That white fiery light seemed to be extremely powerful. Could it be that he had activated an immortal art? What's that? Even the supreme characters at the banquet felt bewildered. The white flame circulating around Qin Wentian's body, was that the power of an innate technique? Qin Wentian didn't feel his blood surging. Instead, he was incomparably calm, exuding a solemn aura. His constellation vanished as numerous Yuan meteor stones appeared around him, unceasingly absorbing the energy into his body. Runic light flickered on the surface of his body, and the fiery light flowing around him actually caused the lava beasts to shrink back, not daring to approach him. The myriad incarnations immortal king should know what that is, right? The gazes of the spectators landed on the female immortal king. Maybe it's some sort of powerful immortal art. It's extremely powerful. The female immortal king closed her eyes as she spoke. Although Qin Wentian was in her illusionscape, she couldn't sense that at this moment, Qin Wentian's blood was surging. At this moment, Qin Wentian's body was extremely calm. Only the runic light on the surface of his skin shone brightly. The eruption of bloodline energy wasn't like this, hence, even the myriad incarnations immortal king had misjudged him. This immortal art seems to be extraordinary. No wonder he can persist on. Deep Flame mumbled. He glanced at Kei Tianyi again. Both of them were still persisting. Time flowed by bit. The atmosphere on the 9 mountains was extremely quiet. The spectators stared at Qin Wentian and Kei Tianyi, feeling somewhat uneasy in their hearts. They have already persisted for a very long time, much longer compared to the others. It's time to end this. Kei Tianyi silently mused, after which he opened his eyes and spoke. I should be number 1, right? Senior, please allow me to exit. The immortal kings all had strange expressions on their faces. After which, the myriad incarnations immortal king released Kei Tianyi from her illusionscape. And just as a look of satisfaction flashed in Kei Tianyi's eyes, he noticed that Qin Wentian was still immersed in the illusionscape as the smile on his face abruptly froze. There was someone who persisted longer than him, although there was only one person. Kei Tianyi's eyes flashed with reluctance. But after that he drew in a deep breath as he emotionlessly spoke. What a pity, I can still persist on. I initially thought that there would be no one else, but who would have thought that there would be someone who could persist to this extent? I was too careless. Qin Wentian didn't know what Kei Tianyi was thinking. Just like what Bai Wuya had predicted, Qin Wentian's determination was far stronger than one could imagine. Retreat? Unless he couldn't persist any longer, as long as he could still persist, he wouldn't give up. Hence 1 day, 2 days time flowed by. Qin Wentian had no intentions of giving up. The heart of the myriad incarnations immortal king trembled as a thought appeared in her mind. If this continued on, would this young man be able to persist on? How stubborn was he? Myriad incarnations, it's already over. There's no need to continue. Deep Flame calmly spoke. Sadly, Kei Tianyi was too careless. If not, I don't know what the ending would be. Victory is victory, defeat is defeat. Why would Kei Tianyi be careless but this young man isn't? Before this you said that he lacked tempering, but now it seems that his will is the strongest. How do you explain this? Bai Wuya faintly spoke, causing Deep Flame's aura to fluctuate as a terrifying destructive might swept over. Even though everyone here was an immortal king, they could still feel how powerful that pressure was. This Deep Flame was an immortal king war general under the Eastern Sage Immortal Emperor. He was truly powerful. His killing intent was extremely intense. Bai Wuya is right. For this round, it can be said that my judgment was wrong. Deep Flame laughed. That destructive pressure disappeared in an instant, but Bai Wuya's gaze did not waver at all. He did not even look at Deep Flame at all. Qin Wentian finally broke free from the illusionscape. It was the myriad incarnations immortal king who took the initiative to let him out. The immortal sense of the myriad incarnations immortal king dissipated. Qin Wentian glanced at his surroundings as he steeled his heart, knowing that he had persisted till the end. At this moment, Dong Xingting walked towards Bai Wuya as he spoke. Senior Bai, for the remaining 100 participants, you can help me test them and bring the remaining 9 here. How about it? That's simple. Bai Wuya spoke. After which, a strand of immortal sense gushed out, instantly arriving above the 9 mountain peaks. The white robe immortal king stood arrogantly in the air, exuding a terrifying might that enveloped the 100 participants who passed the test. He coldly spoke. Before this, the myriad incarnations immortal king selected 100 participants, but I only have 9 left. I'm not as patient as the myriad incarnations immortal king. For the remaining 9, if you don't wish to die, just retreat. Don't waste my time, or I will kill until only 9 remain. The white robe immortal king's voice was so cold that it caused the hearts of everyone to shudder. For the 100 participants, he killed 91, killing until only 9 remained. Even Kei Tianyi was stunned. In the next instant, the white robe immortal king waved his hands as a terrifying sound wave blasted out. Qin Wentian's mind rumbled. He felt that his body was about to be torn apart. His soul was about to shatter as his eardrums bled blood. On the 9 mountain peaks, over 100 participants directly coughed out blood. Not a single one of them survived. This seat is a man of his words. The white robe immortal king waved his hands again. Bolts of lightning shot out, causing the crowd to feel as though their souls were about to disperse. Many of them even felt despair. For those who didn't pass the test earlier, their hearts trembled as they stared at the white robe immortal king in the air. He was too tyrannical and direct, killing 91 participants, leaving only 9. He didn't care about the test. There was no such thing as luck. Qin Wentian's entire body trembled. The pain of his soul being torn apart was truly enough to claim his life. Not only for Qin Wentian, Kei Tianyi was the same as well. His expression was extremely ugly to behold as he stared at Bai Wuya in the air. This madman, how was this a test? This was a massacre, killing until only 9 remained. Even if he was the descendant of the scarce moon immortal king, Bai Wuya showed no mercy at all. No one knew who would die first. Die. Bai Wuya waved his hands again. A scream of misery rang out, sounding extremely miserable in the silence of the 9 mountain peaks, causing the hearts of the 100 participants to shudder. I can't give up. Qin Wentian guarded his heart and mind, chanting a chant as his entire body shone with runic light. The white light was like the fire of his life. Bai Wuya unleashed another attack. This time around, there was actually someone who directly collapsed, dying a miserable death. Qin Wentian's will was incomparably tough, but he still directly collapsed to the ground. His countenance was pale, but he still inclined his head and stared at Bai Wuya in the air. I withdraw. A howl rang out. I withdraw. After the first voice rang out, more and more voices rang out. There was no test in the world that was more tyrannical than a massacre. Very good. You guys chose this path yourselves. As long as you withdraw, you can live. But if you don't, it means that you are handing your life over to me. This is the path you chose, so you should bear the consequences yourself. This seat won't be responsible for your life or death. Bai Wuya's voice was ice cold. Even those immortal kings at the banquet were stunned by his methods. This was truly a madman. Chapter 720. Bai Wuya's way of doing things is truly different from the masses. The myriad incarnations immortal king's eyes flashed with a bright light. Indeed, the one who persisted till the end in your illusionscape was someone Bai Wuya regarded highly. He was the only one who didn't rest, while the others all got some time to rest. However, Bai Wuya treated everyone equally and directly attacked. This was disadvantageous to the person he regarded highly, yet he didn't show any favoritism at all. An old immortal king with a transcendent demeanor praised. This old immortal king was the oldest in the banquet, even older compared to the Eastern sage immortal emperor. The people of the immortal realms had already forgotten his name, and directly referred to him as the undying immortal king. If one wants to enter the tutelage of his majesty, one naturally has to be extraordinary. Maybe Bai Wuya did this because he wanted to see how extraordinary Qin Wentian was. If he couldn't, given Bai Wuya's personality, he would rather admit that his judgment was wrong. But if Qin Wentian still persisted, he would surely gain more impressions. The immortal kings laughed, not caring about the expression on the deep flame immortal king's face. Earlier, the destructive might deep flame unleashed had already caused them to be extremely unhappy. Who were these people seated here? All of them were immortal kings. For those who could reach this level, which of them wouldn't be proud and arrogant? If you deep flame want to fight against Bai Wuya, go ahead and do so, don't affect others. What's the point of unleashing his might against everyone here? They came here because of the Eastern sage immortal emperor. The deep flame immortal king was merely a subordinate of the Eastern sage immortal emperor. There was no need to give him too much face. Seems like there are many who regard this young man highly? The deep flame immortal king's eyes flickered with destructive flames as a smile that was not a smile appeared on his face. What's the point? This old man is already old, and has no plans to accept a disciple. I'm just guessing who the Eastern Sage Immortal Emperor would choose. Although the undying immortal king didn't fear deep flame, his personality was that of a good-natured old man. He wouldn't target anyone. Let's see. The beautiful myriad incarnations immortal king smiled, causing the hearts of people to stir. After all, she was a true celestial maiden. Bai Wuya was still waving his hands. Every single attack was filled with a true killing force that could truly destroy one's willpower. Once one's willpower could no longer withstand it, one's life would be directly destroyed and killed by him. After a few more times, there were a few who initially wanted to retreat, but were too hesitant. They were all killed as their life auras dissipated. The people on the 9 mountains stared at their corpses as their hearts trembled. Although they wanted to retreat, their wills were already on the verge of collapse, yet they were still hesitating. How could they withstand the killing intent of the white-robed immortal king? At this moment, Qin Wentian laid powerlessly on the ground, slumping on the mountain peak. Not only him, none of the other 4 on the 9th peak were still able to stand. All of them had collapsed onto the ground. This was a battle of wills. Qin Wentian inclined his head and stared at the figure in the air. His entire body was covered in white runic light, maintaining the flames of his life. His will was indestructible, incomparably resolute. When he stared at the white-robe immortal king, there was no trace of hatred in his eyes. In fact, there was even a hint of yearning in his eyes. He hoped that one day, he too would be able to achieve such magnificence. I withdraw. More and more people shouted. Being able to enter the top 100, all of them had extraordinary combat prowess. But when faced with a true killing test like this, in addition to the fact that no one knew if they would be able to survive until the end of the 9 participants, not many of them dared to risk their lives. In addition, from the perspectives of many, there were already 4 participants on the 9th peak. They couldn't even be compared to those on the 9th peak after 2 consecutive tests, and the Eastern Sage Great Emperor only accepted a single disciple. Their hopes were already extremely bleak, and there was no need for them to risk their lives. With such thoughts in their minds, their wills would naturally weaken. If they didn't withdraw, they would only die. The white-robe immortal king who was in the air lifted his hand once more. With a wave of his hand, his killing intent gushed forth as another person was killed. I withdraw. At the same time, there were a few people who were on the verge of despair as they shouted out. After which, the white-robe immortal king halted his actions and turned his gaze downwards as he spoke. I initially wanted 9 participants, but there were a few who chose to withdraw at the same time. Right now there are only 8 of you remaining. In that case, the 8 of you shall follow me to the banquet. As the sound of the white-robe immortal king's voice faded, the faces of those who chose to withdraw earlier turned ashen as they felt boundless regret. They had fought for so long until now. If they didn't choose to withdraw earlier, they would be able to enter the immortal palace. However, they couldn't endure it any longer and chose to withdraw. Who could be blamed for this? They could only blame their own wills for not being resolute enough. Follow me. The white-robe immortal king waved his hand as a surge of immortal energy enveloped the 8 of them. After which, a bright light flashed as 8 of them directly vanished from this place. Among them, the 9th peak was completely empty. The 4 participants who chose to ascend the 9th peak had all persevered. The 5 with the most outstanding performance during the test of the female immortal king have all persevered. Seems like the probability of the Eastern Sage Great Emperor choosing a disciple is even higher. Everyone mused in their hearts. Since the Eastern Sage Great Emperor was accepting disciples, he would naturally choose the most outstanding ones. Since the 5 of them performed outstandingly in every test, the probability of them becoming the Eastern Sage Great Emperor's disciple was naturally the highest. However, at this moment, the 8 participants who were brought to the banquet weren't feeling too good either. All 8 of them were panting, feeling extremely weak. The immortal sense of the white-robe immortal king vanished. They only saw him sitting at a certain location in the banquet, quietly drinking his wine as though what happened earlier had nothing to do with him. Only to see that at this moment, the undying immortal king waved his hands as a resplendent green light shone on the 8 participants. Waves of life energy cleansed their bodies, and in a short instant, Qin Wentian and the others felt their bodies being filled with an intense vitality, as though they were filled with boundless energy. This feeling is truly marvelous. Qin Wentian silently mused. He truly couldn't hold on any longer. It was like rain after a long drought. It was too comfortable. His gaze swept over the people at the banquet. Many of them were supreme characters with unfathomable depths. Their eyes seemed to be able to see right through him. Dong Xingting walked over. The gazes of the immortal kings landed on him as they smiled. Does the Eastern Sage Great Emperor still need us to take the test? No need, everyone has already passed the test. My royal father has seen everything, and it's already enough. If he wants to accept disciples, he naturally has his own plans. Dong Xingting shook his head. After which, his gaze landed on the statue of the Dongxing Heaven Emperor. Beams of light flashed as the statue actually emanated a faint aura of life. After which, the statue transformed into a real person. The supreme characters at the banquet all stood up and bowed to the statue. We pay our respects to the Eastern Sage Great Emperor. At this instant, these arrogant immortal kings all retracted their arrogance. Regardless of particle worlds or immortal realms, they all revered the strong. Although these people were immortal kings, they were nothing in front of the Dongxing Heaven Emperor. At their level, the difference of a single level was undoubtedly a heavenly moat. Everyone, please be seated. The will of the Dongxing Heaven Emperor manifested. He sat on the host's seat and stared at Qin Wentian and the other 7 as he spoke. All of you, come up here. What are your names? Your Majesty, my name is Keitiani. Your Majesty, my name is Blackpeak. Everyone reported their names, including Qin Wentian. Their attitudes were all extremely respectful. The Dongxing Heaven Emperor inclined his head slightly as he swept his gaze over everyone. His eyes seemed to be able to see through the souls of people. Your performances are all not bad, but this time around, I will only accept a single disciple. As for the others, if any of you are interested, you can also accept them as your disciples. The Dongxing Heaven Emperor spoke. Since your Majesty is so interested, I'm also willing to accept a disciple. Deep Flame smiled as he stared at the Dongxing Heaven Emperor. Deep Flame, do you have the time to teach others? The Dongxing Heaven Emperor laughed. The dangerous Deep Flame actually had a silly smile on his face as he replied. This time around, Deep Flame will definitely do his best. Haha, I'm really looking forward to it. Deep Flame, who do you think I should accept as a disciple out of these 8? The Dongxing Heaven Emperor stared at Deep Flame as he asked. How would I dare to comment on your Majesty's matters? Deep Flame replied. Since I asked you to suggest something, just do it. Don't talk nonsense. The Dongxing Heaven Emperor unhappily spoke. In that case, if Deep Flame is so bold, I feel that Keitiani is not bad. Deep Flame spoke. As the sound of his voice faded, the Scarce Moon Immortal King felt joy in his heart as an expression of gratitude appeared on his face. Just this sentence alone was enough to make the Scarce Moon Immortal King owe Deep Flame a favor. The Dongxing Heaven Emperor didn't express his opinion. He turned to Bai Wuya and spoke. Bai Wuya, you are the youngest here. Before this, I saw that your attitude was different from Deep Flame's. What do you think? Your Majesty will naturally accept disciples based on your heart. If you want to ask me, I would say that Qin Wentian is more pleasing to the eye. If you want to talk about the reason, he is the youngest. Bai Wuya laughed. Qin Wentian started, feeling somewhat taken aback. Before this, the moment he exited the illusionscape, Bai Wuya attacked him, not giving him any face at all. But he didn't expect that Bai Wuya would actually speak up for him, as though he thought highly of him. Indeed, things cannot be judged on the surface. Makes sense. The Dongxing Heaven Emperor glanced at Qin Wentian before turning to the Myriad Incarnations Immortal King and smiled. Fairy Myriad Incarnations, what about you? I prefer Huataishu. His cultivation method is somewhat similar to mine. The Myriad Incarnations Immortal King laughed. Old fellow, you are already so old. Why don't you give me some suggestions? The Dongxing Heaven Emperor turned to the undying immortal king. The eyes of the undying immortal king flickered with a light of wisdom. He stroked his beard and smiled. All of them are not bad. Your Majesty should already have a decision in your heart. You old fox. The Dongxing Heaven Emperor laughed. After which, his gaze roamed about the 8 of them. Finally, his eyes landed on Qin Wentian as he smiled. Qin Wentian, are you willing to enter my tutelage? As the sound of his voice faded, the countenances of the crowd froze. Many stared at Qin Wentian with envy. In the end, did the Eastern Sage Great Emperor choose him? Qin Wentian's performance was truly dazzling. Since the Eastern Sage Great Emperor chose him, it should be because he already had his eyes on Qin Wentian. In addition, his talent was also very high. Chapter 721. Qin Wentian was somewhat taken aback. Although his performance in the past 3 rounds wasn't bad, the Eastern Sage Great Emperor was after all a supreme existence in the immortal realms. How tyrannical was his strength! If such a character wanted to accept a disciple, the entire immortal realms would be in an uproar. Just the news alone would cause countless people from the immortal realms to search for the royal sacred region. He was very clear how far the distance between him and the Dongxing Heaven Emperor was. This wasn't something that could be summed up by the word talent. In the eyes of supreme existences like the Eastern Sage Great Emperor, there were simply too many geniuses with great talent. A single sentence from him could cause countless geniuses to flock to him. No matter how much of a genius you are, can your value be compared to any of the supreme existences here? These people were all extremely respectful to the Eastern Sage Great Emperor. In his eyes, geniuses were merely Wuxia who had a little more potential. Qin Wentian was already mentally prepared to accept an even more brutal test. He thought that the later tests would be even more difficult. After all, the other 7 weren't any weaker compared to him. But from the looks of things now, it seemed like that was the case. Yet the Dongxing Heaven Emperor directly asked him if he was willing to take him as his master. Is it because of Qin? Qin Wentian drew in a deep breath as his heart trembled. This was a supreme existence in the immortal realms. As long as he took him as his master, the royal sacred sect would be nothing in front of him. Qin Wentian, congratulations. The undying immortal king smiled, nodding his head to Qin Wentian. Congratulations. You actually have the chance to take His Majesty as your master. The other immortal kings all laughed. Even for Deep Flame, he no longer revealed a cold expression towards Qin Wentian. Although he was surprised in his heart, since this was His Majesty's decision, he could only agree with Qin Wentian. In the immortal realms immensely far away from here, Chongqing the Great and Qing Heir stood together, staring at the situation ahead. Chongqing the Great accompanied his woman, and witnessed the entire process. In fact, they could even hear the voices of those who spoke. At this moment, a smile appeared on Chongqing the Great's face as he spoke. Qing Heir, since Eastern Sage has promised, he naturally wouldn't go back on his words. He even intentionally allowed us to witness the entire process, and wouldn't purposely make things difficult for him. As long as he has talent, we will give him a chance. In truth, Eastern Sage has already done it. Although Qin Wentian isn't too far away from the others, Eastern Sage still directly chose him. Yes. Qing Heir replied. A trace of happiness could be seen in her eyes. That cold expression on her face seemed to have softened by a lot. At this moment, in the banquet, Qin Wentian drew in a deep breath as he stared at the Dongxing Heaven Emperor. He knew the reason why he came to participate in this examination. Right now, the Dongxing Heaven Emperor issued an invitation to him. Although it was somewhat unexpected, the ending was still perfect. After entering the tutelage of the Dongxing Heaven Emperor, he would naturally work hard in his cultivation, and wouldn't disappoint Qing Heir's good intentions. Junior is naturally willing. Qin Wentian replied. Everyone had smiles on their faces, none of them were surprised. The Eastern Sage Great Emperor was willing to accept a disciple. Even immortal kings would be moved, let alone Qin Wentian. There was no reason for him to reject. To him, this was a heavenly opportunity. Since you are willing, why aren't you acknowledging me as your master? Dong Xingting stood beside the Eastern Sage Great Emperor as he spoke to Qin Wentian. Qin Wentian nodded. After which, he took a step forward and bowed to the Dongxing Heaven Emperor. After which, he knelt and respectfully spoke. Disciple Qin Wentian pays his respect to Master. Get up! The Dongxing Heaven Emperor waved his hands as a surge of energy supported Qin Wentian's body, allowing him to stand up. He smiled. Since you are my disciple, I naturally have the responsibility to take care of your cultivation. You should be from this particle world, right? Yes. Qin Wentian nodded in reply. Emchem. The Dongxing Heaven Emperor nodded lightly. It's truly rare to have such talent in a particle world. However, you would definitely lack some cruel training. Even if your talent is good, you still need to temper yourself before you can grow. Regardless of my son or disciple, you can't just rely on my protection. If you do that, you would only be a mediocre talent. Disciple understands. Qin Wentian's way of thinking was also in agreement with the Dongxing Heaven Emperor. It's good that you understand. Don't think that you would be able to live a carefree life just because you are my disciple. The Dongxing Heaven Emperor slowly spoke. After which, he turned to Deep Flame and spoke. Deep Flame, you have an Abyss Legion under your command and would often engage in combat. I have no way to guide him in his cultivation. Hence I will entrust him to you. There's no need to take special care of him. Just let him become a member of the Abyss Legion and temper him. Abyss Legion? The various immortal kings were somewhat bewildered. They had heard of this legion before. It was a legion under the command of Deep Flame, and was extremely strict. The death rate was exceedingly high, but those who walked out were all extremely powerful. There were even some who became internal servants of the Eastern Sage Immortal Palace. The Eastern Sage Immortal Emperor actually wanted to let this new disciple join the Abyss Legion to temper himself. However, they had no way to guess the thoughts of the Eastern Sage Immortal Emperor. If Qin Wentian could endure the tempering of the Abyss Legion, he would definitely have a bright future ahead of him. Yes, Your Majesty. May I ask Your Majesty, how often do you allow him to enter? Deep Flame asked. Once every 1,000 years. Within 1,000 years, he would be allowed to enter for 3 months. If I have the time, I can guide him once. The Dongxing Heaven Emperor calmly spoke. The members of the Abyss Legion were always carrying out missions, and many of them were extremely dangerous. Their movements were all restricted and they couldn't leave their posts without permission. If they disobeyed, the consequences would be death. Yes, Your Majesty. What level of tempering should he reach? Deep Flame asked again. When he is like you and has stepped into the Immortal King realm, he can come to my Immortal Palace. I will personally guide him in his cultivation. The Dongxing Heaven Emperor replied. Your Majesty, this subordinate has already stepped into the Immortal King realm for a long time, but I've never had such an opportunity before. Deep Flame nodded. He glanced at Qin Wentian as he spoke. Qin Wentian, in the future, you will follow me. I will help His Majesty temper you. Qin Wentian had been quietly listening to their conversation, as a strange expression appeared on his face. Master, the Abyss Legion only has 3 months of freedom every 1,000 years? Qin Wentian stared at the Dongxing Heaven Emperor as he asked. Yes, this legion is the strictest and strictest one under Deep Flame. But those who manage to survive are all extremely powerful. All of them are at the Immortal Foundation realm. Over the countless years, there are even some who have broken through to the Immortal King realm. This place is suitable for you to temper yourself. The Dongxing Heaven Emperor nodded. Master, 1,000 years is too long to me. Can you allow this disciple to choose his own tempering method? Qin Wentian respectfully spoke. It wasn't his wish to disobey the Dongxing Heaven Emperor the moment he became his disciple, but he had only cultivated for less than 30 years. 1,000 years was truly too long. Could he toss Mo Qingqing aside for 1,000 years? He couldn't do it. Also, although Qin Wentian was extremely hardworking, he still yearned for freedom in his bones. Hence, he raised this objection. He took the Eastern Sage Immortal Emperor as his master because he wanted to enter the immortal realms and get closer to Qing'er. But if he only had freedom once every 1,000 years, wouldn't he be getting further and further away from Qing'er? The Dongxing Heaven Emperor and the others at the banquet were all stunned by the objection raised by Qin Wentian. After which, the Eastern Sage Immortal Emperor continued. Qin Wentian, everyone in the immortal realms knows that I'm extremely strict to my descendants, disciples and subordinates. Since you took me as your master, I will be responsible for your cultivation. Maybe your cultivation time hasn't been long, but in the immortal realms, 1,000 years is truly too short. If you want to become a supreme existence in the future, you have to be able to withstand the test of time. This is extremely important to temper your heart. The reason why the Abyss Legion is so strict is because it wants to temper talents. Master. Qin Wentian spoke again. Disciple doesn't mean to contradict master. It's just that up until now, disciple has only cultivated for 29 years. 1,000 years to disciple is truly too long. Maybe I would have the chance to step into the immortal king realm within 1,000 years. If master is truly considerate of this disciple, you can arrange other tempering methods for me. Qin Wentian, 1,000 years is truly too short in the immortal realms. The undying immortal king seemed to have the intention of persuading Qin Wentian. Deep Flame's eyes flashed with coldness as he spoke. Qin Wentian, it isn't so easy to break through to the immortal king realm. Among everyone here, Wuxia used the shortest amount of time to break through to the immortal king realm. Yet he spent 8,000 years. Yet you actually said. In addition, His Majesty said this for your sake. You have just entered the sect, and you are already questioning the arrangements of His Majesty? This isn't appropriate. Do you know how difficult it is to be accepted as a disciple by my royal father? Dong Shengting spoke. Qin Wentian inclined his head and stared into his eyes. That sharp gaze of his flickered with a hint of mockery, involuntarily causing Qin Wentian to recall the time when Dong Shengting went to the royal sacred region to receive Qing. Was it truly a great fortune for him to be accepted as a disciple by the Dongxing Heaven Emperor? Earlier, the Dongxing Heaven Emperor said that he would only have a period of free time once every 1,000 years. If the Dongxing Heaven Emperor was free, he would guide him. But this meant that if he wasn't free, this disciple of his wouldn't even be able to see the face of the Eastern Sage Immortal King. Unless one day, he stepped into the Immortal King realm. Only then would he be qualified to receive the guidance of the Dongxing Heaven Emperor. Qin Wentian didn't really need the guidance of the Eastern Sage Immortal King. But if the master valued the disciple, there was no need for the disciple to say anything. It was something that would happen naturally. Unless the master didn't really value the disciple that much. Just like now. Maybe it was because of Qing, or that the Dongxing Heaven Emperor chose to accept him as a disciple. Hence, there was no need for him to take any further examinations. But it was also because of this reason that the Dongxing Heaven Emperor truly valued him as a disciple and wanted to nurture him. If not, no matter how strict a master was, if he liked a disciple, he would not even raise any objections. Inclining his head, Qin Wentian stared at the emotionless gaze of the Eastern Sage Immortal King, as well as the mocking look in the eyes of the various immortal kings. He could personally feel the pride of a supreme existence. In their eyes, the fact that the Dongxing Heaven Emperor accepted him as a disciple was already a heaven-defying opportunity. Hence, he should be respectful and listen to the guidance of his master. He shouldn't have any other thoughts. The people here all felt that this was only natural. After all, he was merely a genius from a particle world, while the other party was none other than the Dongxing Heaven Emperor. They all felt that as long as the Eastern Sage Immortal King waved his hand, countless geniuses like him would flock to him. Qin Wentian was fortunate enough to be the disciple of the Eastern Sage Immortal King, but he actually dared to go against his master's wishes. Chapter 722. Dongxing Heaven Emperor had an emotionless expression on his face. His eyes that were as deep as the starry skies had no hints of emotions. Nobody could tell what he was thinking. He quietly stared at Qin Wentian. Upon seeing Qin Wentian also looking at him, he spoke again. This is the first time you want to go against your master's order. Is it because from your point of view, if I accept you as my disciple, you would be able to sleep peacefully? As your master, I should guide you in your cultivation and provide you with the best resources? Your Majesty, Wentian has no such intentions. Qin Wentian replied. What are your majesty? You are no longer referring to me as your master. Eastern Sage's voice was filled with anger. Dong Xingting, who was beside him, had an even colder look on his face. If father accepts a disciple, he would be able to cause millions of particle worlds to flock to him and worship him. Geniuses like you are simply too common. In the immortal realms, there has never been a disciple who is as arrogant as you. Qin Wentian stared at Dong Xingting's cold gaze, speechless. In any case, no matter what he said, it would always be wrong because their statuses weren't equal. He was a genius from a particle world, while Qin Wentian was the Dongxing Heaven Emperor. The matter of him taking Dong Xingting as his master, everyone felt that he, Qin Wentian, had climbed up the social ladder. Yet he actually dared to disobey. As he thought of this, Qin Wentian sighed in his heart. The disparity in strength was too great, and the disparity in statuses was simply too great. He suddenly thought that if Dong Xingting didn't like him, he could just take Dongxing Heaven Emperor as his master, and Dong Xingting could do whatever he wanted to him. Was this unpleasantness because of Qin? Seems like it isn't so easy to climb up the social ladder for immortal emperors. Qin Wentian mocked himself in his heart. It was truly too easy for the Dongxing Heaven Emperor to accept a genius. Even if Qin Wentian became his disciple because of a favor, there wouldn't be any status to speak of. Taking a deep breath, Qin Wentian bowed to the Dongxing Heaven Emperor and said respectfully, Your Majesty, Qin Wentian is not blessed. The surrounding immortal kings were all stunned, staring at Qin Wentian in astonishment. Some of them even thought that Qin Wentian had gone mad, to actually be so daring. He just took the Eastern Sage Immortal Emperor as his master, and now, he actually wanted to separate from the Eastern Sage Immortal Emperor? Was he crazy? If this matter was circulated out, what would the people of the immortal realms say? That the Dongxing Heaven Emperor was abandoned by a genius from a particle world? How ridiculous it was, but it was happening right in front of their eyes. Dongxing Heaven Emperor fell silent. He stared at the bowing Qin Wentian, and after a long time, he finally spoke. To think that my Eastern Sage Immortal Emperor would actually want to accept a disciple with a questionable character. How ridiculous. Qin Wentian didn't explain anything. In this place, he had no authority to speak at all. Earlier, you have already performed the ceremony of taking me as your master. Hence, there's already a master-disciple relationship between us. If you betray the Eastern Sage Immortal Emperor, you will be executed according to the rules of the immortal realms. As the sound of the Dongxing Heaven Emperor's voice faded, Qin Wentian's countenance turned pale. The immortal kings at the banquet all stared at Qin Wentian with pity in their eyes. He originally had a chance to enter the tutelage of the Eastern Sage Immortal Emperor. Yet such a thing actually happened. What a pity! Your Majesty! At this moment, a voice rang out. The Dongxing Heaven Emperor turned his gaze over, staring at the person who spoke. It was none other than Bai Wuya. This young man's character isn't good. How can he have the qualifications to enter your Majesty's tutelage? Although your Majesty wanted to accept a disciple today, but since you've already seen through this young man, there's no need for him to betray the sect and damage your Majesty's reputation. Why don't you just expel him and treat it as a joke? Your Majesty can then choose one of the remaining 7 to accept as your disciple. Bai Wuya slowly spoke, his voice calm. Many people cast a deep glance at Bai Wuya. The people here were all immortal kings, and which of them weren't old monsters that had lived for over 10,000 years? Although Bai Wuya was speaking on behalf of the Eastern Sage Immortal Emperor, in truth, he was also helping Qin Wentian. However, Bai Wuya's words made sense as well. The Dongxing Heaven Emperor glanced at him before shifting his gaze back to Qin Wentian as he spoke. Bai Wuya is right. Just treat my intention of accepting a disciple as a joke. Today, I'm in a good mood, and the words I said before still stand. Today, I will accept a personal disciple. If any of you are interested, you can also choose one from the remaining 7 to accept, including Qin Wentian. Your Majesty is benevolent. The undying immortal king laughed. Your Majesty is benevolent. Everyone spoke. The Dongxing Heaven Emperor no longer glanced at Qin Wentian. Instead, he turned to the other 7 and spoke. Let me ask you guys first. If you want to enter my tutelage, you have to obey the orders of your master, and must not disobey. Which of you is willing to do so? Qin Wentian still stood there awkwardly. But at this moment, a voice rang out in his mind, "Retreat quietly." Qin Wentian's heart stirred slightly. After that, he quietly retreated to the back of the crowd, outside the banquet. Drawing in a deep breath, he calmed his heart. Seems like he would have to disappoint Qin, or this time around. If he wanted to enter the immortal realms, he would have to depend on himself to walk out step by step. Junior is willing. Kei Tianyi immediately bowed as he spoke to the Dongxing Heaven Emperor. Junior is willing. Black Peak and the others also respectfully replied. The Dongxing Heaven Emperor clearly added on his earlier words, because of Qin Wentian. All of them expressed their willingness except for one. Hua Taishu didn't express his willingness. The Dongxing Heaven Emperor didn't look at Hua Taishu. He stared at Kei Tianyi as he spoke. Kei Tianyi, you are the descendant of the scarce moon immortal king. If I accept you as my disciple, I would definitely be stricter than the scarce moon immortal king. Do you have the ability to endure it? Being able to enter the tutelage of your majesty, I have no regrets even if I have to die 9 times. Kei Tianyi knelt down. The Dongxing Heaven Emperor smiled and nodded. Fine. In that case, I shall accept you as my disciple today. A look of joy flashed in Kei Tianyi's eyes as he excitedly spoke. Disciple Kei Tianyi pays his respects to master. Good, get up. The Dongxing Heaven Emperor smiled. At this moment, the scarce moon immortal king stood up and bowed to the Dongxing Heaven Emperor. Your Majesty, accepting this unfilial son as your disciple is the honor of my scarce moon immortal manor. In the future, your Majesty can teach him however you want, the stricter the better. MHM. The Dongxing Heaven Emperor nodded. After this matter, I will bring him back to the Eastern Sage Immortal Palace first before making arrangements for him. Your Majesty, please do as you wish. The scarce moon immortal king bowed and sat back down. Kei Tianyi, congratulations. Dongxing Ting smiled at Kei Tianyi. Kei Tianyi nodded and bowed. Kei Tianyi pays his respects to senior brother. Okay, in the future if junior brother has any matters, you can always look for me. Dongxing Ting spoke. Many thanks, senior brother. A look of joy appeared on Kei Tianyi's face. Seems like he had to improve his relationship with Dongxing Ting in the future. Congratulations to your Majesty for accepting a disciple. The undying immortal king raised his cup and smiled. Congratulations to your Majesty for accepting a disciple. Everyone raised their cups. This undying immortal king had always been someone who knew how to conduct himself. His reaction was truly fast. The unhappiness he felt earlier seemed to have dissipated with just a few words. As for Qin Wentian, no one seemed to be interested in him anymore. The Dongxing Heaven Emperor drank a cup with everyone before he spoke. There are still quite a few geniuses here. Do you all have any thoughts? Haha, your Majesty is right. Since your Majesty has already accepted a disciple, your subordinate naturally wishes to accept one as well. Deep Flame laughed heartily. Blackpeak, are you willing to take me, Deep Flame, as your master? Blackpeak's eyes flashed with joy. Deep Flame was a powerful war general under the Dongxing Heaven Emperor, and was proficient in slaughter. This was exactly what Blackpeak wanted. Although he wasn't able to enter the Dongxing Heaven Emperor's tutelage, being able to take an immortal king as his master was also a good thing. Disciple Blackpeak pays his respects to master. Blackpeak respectfully spoke. Let me join in the fun as well. An immortal king with sharp eyes stared at Yang as he asked. Yang, are you willing to take me, Solitary Blade, as your master? This immortal king was none other than the Solitary Blade Immortal King. Yang's constellation was a saber-type constellation and hence, he wanted to accept Yang as his disciple to support the Dongxing Heaven Emperor. Yang pays his respects to master. Since Yang could enter the tutelage of an immortal king, he was naturally willing. In the immortal realms, immortal kings were supreme characters in their eyes. Normally, it was extremely rare to encounter one. Most probably, only that fellow Qin Wentian actually missed out on this chance to become the personal disciple of an immortal emperor. 3 of them entered the 9th peak. Out of the 4, only Qin Wentian didn't have a master. Hua Taishu, are you willing to enter my tutelage? At this moment, the myriad incarnations immortal king threw out an olive branch to Hua Taishu. Hua Taishu's expression was calm, only to see the myriad incarnations immortal king smiling, her beauty moving the hearts of others. Hua Taishu nodded his head and bowed. Disciple Hua Taishu pays his respects to master. Sure. The myriad incarnations immortal king smiled and nodded. After that, she stretched her hand out, lifting Hua Taishu up. Hua Taishu, your luck is truly good. It's unknown how many people in the immortal realms wish to enter the tutelage of this beautiful myriad incarnations immortal king. This time around, many people are going to be jealous of you. The undying immortal king joked, knowing how to lighten the mood. Old fellow, how can you be so indecent in front of juniors? The myriad incarnations immortal king glared at the undying immortal king. Her every frown and smile was filled with a myriad of emotions. At the immortal king realm, one's demeanor would naturally be extraordinary. Hence, for some females, as long as their talent was good, they would be able to cultivate quickly. As their cultivation base grew stronger, they would grow more and more beautiful. If one's demeanor was too beautiful, they would be considered a true fairy once they stepped into the immortal realm. Haha, I'm speaking the truth. The undying immortal king laughed. Everyone at the banquet laughed as well. The myriad incarnations immortal king was the only female immortal king here, and she was also beautiful. Many immortal kings tried to woo her but to no avail. After all, as an immortal king character, the standards of the myriad incarnations immortal king would definitely be very high. She wouldn't even be interested in ordinary immortal kings. She basically didn't need to rely on men. In this case, out of the four of them, only Qin Wentian met with a mishap. The others all managed to enter the tutelage of a famous teacher. Kei Tianyi's luck was even better. He managed to enter the tutelage of the Dongxing Heaven Emperor. It was unknown how many people would be envious of him. In a faraway location in the immortal realms, Qing quietly watched everything. Staring at the lonely silhouette of Qin Wentian, a trace of coldness could be seen in her eyes. Qing this young man truly doesn't know what's good for him. Eastern sage did intend to accept him as a disciple, but how could a character like him not have a temper? Being contradicted the moment he accepted a disciple, he would naturally be unhappy. Being able to not blame him is already considered giving him a lot of face. Changqing the Great spoke. He will regret this. Qing coldly spoke. Chapter 723. After the test by Wuxia, the 8 of them were brought to the banquet. Right now, 4 of them had already been accepted as disciples by immortal kings. Qin Wentian stood at the back of the crowd, quietly watching everything. It was impossible to say that there were no fluctuations in his heart. Ever since this immortal palace descended, the entire royal sacred region was paying attention to it. He brought with him the heart of a pilgrim, bringing with him his determination, participating in the test and contending against the other geniuses of the immortal realms. Finally, he was accepted as a disciple by the Dongxing Heaven Emperor. At that time he was the center of attention. The immortal kings all congratulated him. However, in the blink of an eye, he was abandoned by the Dongxing Heaven Emperor, becoming a spectator. The immortal kings didn't even bother to glance at him. As for geniuses, if they were stripped of their status as disciples of the Dongxing Heaven Emperor, they were simply insignificant existences. Even before immortal kings, they were existences akin to ants. No one would even bother to glance at you. This was the first lesson that Qin Wentian came into contact with the major powers of the immortal realms. The respect and reverence for experts in the immortal realms was even more obvious and direct compared to the royal sacred region. In such a short period of time, Qin Wentian experienced great ups and downs. Even in the eyes of the various immortal kings, these were all great ups and downs that could determine his fate. However, Qin Wentian had no regrets. He had his own principles. Even if the other party was a supreme character, the Eastern Sage Great Emperor, a hegemon of an immortal realm, he would still stick to his heart. No matter how others viewed him, his heart was resolute. In the royal sacred region, countless lives could see what was happening in the immortal palace. Although they couldn't hear the sounds, They could faintly guess some things just by looking at the words and actions of those people. That supreme character sat on the throne the moment he appeared. All the experts bowed to him and Dong Xingting stood beside him. From this, one could tell that this person was none other than the main character of this event, the Eastern Sage Great Emperor, who was rumored to be accepting a disciple. Not long ago, Qin Wentian bowed to the Eastern Sage Great Emperor, as though wanting to take him as his master. The experts at the banquet all smiled at Qin Wentian, and at that instant, the people of the royal sacred region were all incomparably shocked. Even when competing against the geniuses of the immortal realms, Qin Wentian was still as dazzling as ever. Eventually, he became the disciple of the Eastern Sage Great Emperor? But just when everyone was thinking this, they soon discovered that the countenances of the Eastern Sage Great Emperor and Qin Wentian had changed. The gazes of the supreme characters at the banquet were all changing as well when they stared at Qin Wentian. After that, Qin Wentian retreated and stood at the edge of the crowd, as though he was completely marginalized and had no status at all. After that, another person replaced him and stood at his position, bowing to the Eastern Sage Great Emperor. Such a scene caused many to speculate that the Dongxing Heaven Emperor might have given up on Qin Wentian and chose another person instead. After that, a few others, including Hua Taishu, were all taken in as disciples by the immortal kings. Only Qin Wentian stood at the back, feeling extremely lonely, as though he was forgotten by everyone. What happened exactly? Countless people in the royal sacred region were speculating in their hearts. Those from Grand Xia and Chu were all staring at the immortal palace in the air. What happened to Qin Wentian exactly? For those who cared about Qin Wentian, they were all worried for Qin Wentian. In the immortal palace in the air, another person was taken in as a disciple by an immortal king. Out of the 8 who went up, 5 of them chose to take Qin Wentian as their master. It wasn't that all 5 of them were so outstanding, but rather it was because this time around many people gave face to the Dongxing Heaven Emperor. Since the Dongxing Heaven Emperor wanted to take in a disciple, they would only accept one. Naturally, the prerequisite was that the disciple must be pleasing to the eye. Nobody dared to accept Qin Wentian as a disciple. If they were to go against the Eastern Sage Great Emperor and make the Dongxing Heaven Emperor unhappy, even though they knew that Qin Wentian wasn't inferior to the others, none of them dared to say anything. In fact, they didn't even bother with Qin Wentian. Dong Xingting's gaze occasionally swept over to Qin Wentian. Within his deep eyes, a hint of mockery could be seen. Wanting to ascend to the heavens in a single step? Was that even possible? This time around, his royal father had already given face to Chongqing the Great. He believed that Chongqing the Great had also seen it. It was this young man who was too disrespectful and had a bad character. Qin Wentian's perception was extremely sharp. He could sense the look in Dong Xingting's eyes as he silently mused in his heart. Seems like not taking the Dongxing Heaven Emperor as his master wasn't something to be regretful about. If not, how could a disciple with no status compare to the genius son of Dongxing Heaven Emperor, Dong Xingting? Once he became a subordinate of Deep Flame, wouldn't Deep Flame be able to do whatever he wanted? At this moment, Qin Wentian really wanted to leave this awkward place. But since he was here, he couldn't leave even if he wanted to. There was no way for him to return. At this moment, a strand of wool directly gushed into his sea of consciousness, causing Qin Wentian to furrow his brows. He was prepared to resist, but a moment later, a voice drifted over, "Don't resist." Upon hearing this voice, Qin Wentian started. After that he gave up resisting, only to see a powerful wool directly gushing into his sea of consciousness, causing his heart to involuntarily pound. In Qin Wentian's sea of consciousness, a silhouette appeared in front of him. This silhouette was none other than the white-robed immortal king by Wuxia. There's no need to be shocked. This is my immortal sense. The disparity between our strength is too great. My immortal sense can directly enter your sea of consciousness. You only need to communicate with me through your will. The white-robed immortal king spoke to Qin Wentian. According to what I know, Eastern Sage's disciple recruitment has something to do with Chongqing the Great. You should be acquainted with Chongqing the Great's daughter, right? I don't know her identity, but the possibility of what Senior said is very high. Qin Wentian tried to communicate with Bai Wuya through his will. As expected, Bai Wuya's immortal sense could hear it. He nodded lightly and continued. In that case, there's nothing wrong with that. The Dongxing Heaven Emperor should have agreed to his good friend Changqing the Great. But from the ending of this matter, it can be said that Eastern Sage has done his part. After all, this can be considered as you disobeyed him and refused to become his disciple. However, I have no idea if Eastern Sage did this intentionally or unintentionally. Naturally, I'm not interested in knowing. I'm merely passing by here. It's a pity to see you in such a situation. Let me ask you, after you broke through to celestial phenomenon, which layer of heavenly layer did you condense your astral soul from? Bai Wuya asked. 7th layer. Qin Wentian replied. Being able to condense a violet gold astral soul in a particle world. Not bad. Bai Wuya praised, but he wasn't too shocked. He then spoke to Qin Wentian. The reason why I used immortal sense to communicate with you is because I want to extend an invitation to you. But before I do so, I want to know your intentions. Are you willing to join a power? This power is the one I'm currently in, but I won't say the name of it for now. If you are willing, I will tell you. But if you aren't, just forget about this matter. If others knew what Bai Wuya said to Qin Wentian, they would surely be greatly shocked. Everyone knew that in the immortal realms, Bai Wuya had never joined any power before. At the very least, no one knew which power he had joined. Everyone thought that he was a Lone Ranger, and was a madman with his own opinions. His combat prowess was extremely strong. Qin Wentian naturally didn't know about this. He felt somewhat taken aback in his heart. When everyone was blindly following the lead of the Dongxing Heaven Emperor, this Bai Wuya, who had always treated him very favorably, actually used immortal sense to communicate with him, and even extended an invitation to him. Senior, what kind of power is that? Qin Wentian asked. We won't interfere with your freedom, nor will we command you to do anything. However, we also won't provide you with any protective umbrella. You are still you, constantly tempering yourself, seeking to survive in the immortal realms, seeking to strengthen yourself. If you wish to obtain cultivation resources, you have to rely on your own capabilities to fight for them. The only 2 conditions I have for you is that you have to keep everything about this power a secret. You are not allowed to announce to others that you are a member of this power, or even your kin. Secondly, if you want to join this power, you have to take on an expert as your master. In the immortal realms, you are not allowed to join any other power. If you violate these 2 conditions, you will be treated as a traitor and will be killed. Hence, you have to consider this carefully. Bai Wuya solemnly spoke, his words causing Qin Wentian's heart to tremble. What a mysterious power. The only restriction was that you have to keep it a secret, and you are not allowed to join any other power. In addition, let me remind you again. The conditions to join this power are firstly, outstanding talent, a violet gold astral soul for your 5th astral soul. Secondly, you cannot be someone from any sect or power in the immortal realms. You have already fulfilled the first condition. Also, you came from a particle world and have no fate with the Eastern Sage Immortal Emperor. Hence you have fulfilled the second condition. And after I, Bai Wuya, broke through to the Immortal King realm, I have the qualifications to receive you. Hence, I'm issuing an invitation to you. Bai Wuya spoke, causing Qin Wentian's heart to tremble. A violet gold astral soul was required for one to have the qualifications to join this power. However, this faction placed great importance on secrecy, and whether or not you were already a member of another faction. Perhaps this was related to the secretive nature of this faction. It was precisely because of this that Bai Wuya was so cautious. In fact, before he agreed, he wouldn't even tell him which faction he was from. Senior, you said that I have to be a disciple of an expert to join this power. What do you mean? Qin Wentian asked. Everyone who joins this power would have to be a disciple of that expert. Hence, if you nod your head, you will be a disciple of the same person as me and can be considered as my junior apprentice brother. However, you and I only need to know each other in our hearts. We cannot acknowledge each other to the outside world. Bai Wuya replied. Qin Wentian fell silent. He was contemplating. If he joined this power, he would be a disciple of the same sect as Bai Wuya. and would be considered as the junior apprentice brother of Bai Wuya. A character like the White Robe Immortal King was actually his senior apprentice brother. From this, one could very well imagine how powerful this mysterious power was. It wouldn't be any weaker compared to the Dongxing Heaven Emperor. If he joined the Dongxing Heaven Emperor as a disciple, he wouldn't be able to receive any guidance unless he broke through to the Immortal King realm. But if he joined Bai Wuya's power and entered the Immortal King realm, he should be able to come into contact with the core members of this power. If he joined the Dongxing Heaven Emperor as a disciple, it was also impossible for him to join any other power. If not, how could the Dongxing Heaven Emperor spare his life? The difference was that if he joined the Eastern Sage sect, everyone in the world would know about it. But if he joined the Eastern Sage sect as a disciple of the expert Bai Wuya mentioned, he wouldn't be able to speak of this matter to others. If he joined the Eastern Sage sect, he would only have a single chance of freedom every 1,000 years. But if he joined Bai Wuya's sect, he wouldn't be restricted from doing anything. When supreme existences accept disciples, they would see if they are pleasing to the eye. For a disciple to choose a sect, isn't it the same? This is fate. Bai Wuya has always regarded me favorably, and I also have a good impression of senior Bai Wuya. Since this is the case, what's there to worry about? Even if I can't join the Eastern Sage sect, I can always depend on myself. Qin Wentian mused, after which he replied, I'm willing. Good. Bai Wuya nodded. His immortal sense entered Qin Wentian's consciousness and stared at Qin Wentian as he spoke. I, Bai Wuya, officially accept Qin Wentian as a disciple of my sect. On behalf of my master, the Realm Lord of the Heavenly Talisman Realm, I accept Qin Wentian as a disciple under the Realm Lord. Qin Wentian, from today onwards, you are officially a disciple of the Heavenly Talisman Realm. Chapter 724. Realm Lord of the Heavenly Talisman Realm. Qin Wentian mused, memorizing this name. From today onwards, when he enters the immortal realms, he can no longer be a disciple of any other power. He is a disciple of the Heavenly Talisman Realm. Senior. Qin Wentian's will moved slightly, but Bai Wuya interrupted. In private, you can just refer to me as Senior Brother Bai. Okay. Qin Wentian replied. Senior Brother Bai, when will I be able to meet Master? And how many disciples does Master have under him? Only after I stepped into the Immortal King realm did I officially join the sect, and possess the qualifications to receive disciples. That's why I accepted you as my master's disciple. But in truth, you have only been acknowledged by me, the disciple who accepted you. You haven't obtained the approval of Master yet. Only by obtaining Master's approval would you have the possibility to meet Master. Bai Wuya didn't hide anything and spoke to Qin Wentian. Also, you have to remember that there are 2 rules that cannot be violated. If not, you will die for sure if you learn of this secret. I'm not sure how many disciples Master has under him, but there are definitely many who are stronger than me. Back then, I once killed the descendant of an immortal emperor in the immortal realms, and was hunted down by that immortal emperor. At that time, there was another immortal emperor who stood out for me. Everyone thought that this immortal emperor only liked my personality, but in reality, that wasn't the case. He is also a disciple under the Heavenly Talisman Realm Lord, and is one of my senior apprentices. Qin Wentian's heart trembled. An immortal emperor senior apprentice brother? It seemed that the Eastern Sage Immortal Emperor was also an immortal emperor character. The Heavenly Talisman Realm Lord had an immortal emperor as his disciple. How strong was he exactly? The things Bai Wuya told him were all secrets. If the people of the immortal realms knew that the person who stood out for Bai Wuya back then was actually someone from Bai Wuya's sect, it would surely cause a huge storm. Such a sect was already extremely powerful, but no one knew that Bai Wuya had joined this power before. How terrifying would this be? Understood. Thank you for your advice, senior brother. Qin Wentian nodded. I can't bring you away in front of everyone. You still have to head to the immortal realms alone. I will leave a strand of my will on you, and when you step into the immortal realms, I will be able to sense it. At that time, I will come over to guide you to the Heavenly Talisman Realm, and you can choose an introductory immortal manual to officially join the Heavenly Talisman Realm. In the future, When fellow disciples meet each other, although they wouldn't be able to recognize each other, they would be able to sense that the other party is from the same sect. Bai Wuya slowly spoke. Growing up in the immortal realms, I've received the care and concern of many senior brothers. The disciples of the heavenly talisman realm don't belong to any other powers, and they can't join other sects as well. Many of us are solitary cultivators, hence when we meet people from the same sect, we would feel a sense of closeness and unity. Qin Wentian silently noted it down as he tried to imagine what sort of power the heavenly talisman realm was exactly. They were so powerful, yet they were willing to hide in the shadows, keeping such a low profile and being so mysterious. Alright, it's time for me to leave. The strand of immortal sense I left behind will be very weak, and won't have any sentience. It will only allow my true body to sense your location. Don't accidentally destroy it. Bai Wuya smiled. After which, that powerful strand of immortal sense slowly retreated. An instant later, Qin Wentian sensed that Bai Wuya's strand of immortal sense had completely vanished. Only a faint strand of immortal sense remained. Just like what Bai Wuya had said. Qin Wentian could easily destroy it if he wasn't careful. Drawing in a deep breath, the encounters these few days were truly wondrous. He couldn't imagine it at all. He almost entered the tutelage of the Dongxing Heaven Emperor, but was expelled in the end. All the major characters treated him coldly, not daring to get close to him. And now, Bai Wuya actually invited him to join another major character. A character that might be even stronger than the Dongxing Heaven Emperor, the Realm Lord of the Heavenly Talisman Realm. His heart gradually calmed down. Qin Wentian was very clear that no matter who he chose as his master, the most important thing on the path of cultivation was still to rely on oneself. A master was just an external source of strength. One could borrow it, but one mustn't rely too much on it. Only by being strong would one be able to gain recognition and respect. The Dongxing Heaven Emperor and the others continued chatting leisurely, no longer glancing at Qin Wentian. It was like he didn't exist at all. After some time, the Dongxing Heaven Emperor spoke. Alright, I've spent quite a bit of time with everyone today and I've also accepted a disciple. Let's end the banquet here. Right, let us toast to your majesty and bid you farewell. The undying immortal king raised his wine cup and spoke. He didn't try to persuade the Dongxing Heaven Emperor to stay for a while longer. If his status was the same as the Dongxing Heaven Emperor, they might be able to persuade him to stay. But their statuses were different. If the Dongxing Heaven Emperor wanted to leave, they wouldn't have the qualifications to do so. These old freaks of the immortal realms were very clear on the difference in status and status. In that case, let me drink one last cup with everyone. The Dongxing Heaven Emperor smiled as he raised his cup. The immortal kings all stood up, only the Dongxing Heaven Emperor remained seated. Farewell, your majesty. The immortal kings spoke in unison as they drained the wine in their cups. The Dongxing Heaven Emperor also drank a cup of wine. His gaze swept past the immortal kings before shifting onto Qin Wentian, who was at the very back. Staring at Qin Wentian, who was standing alone at the side, the Dongxing Heaven Emperor emotionlessly spoke. If you know your mistakes, I can recommend an immortal king subordinate to guide you in your cultivation, allowing you to enter his tutelage. Qin Wentian inclined his head and stared at the Dongxing Heaven Emperor. The Dongxing Heaven Emperor's tone was filled with pity, as though this was a favor to him. The other immortal kings turned their gazes onto Qin Wentian. All of them had the same feeling. Deep Flame bluntly spoke. Your Majesty is magnanimous, to think that you would still treat him so well. In the clear eyes of Qin Wentian, there weren't many fluctuations of emotions. He was very calm. He then bowed slightly to the Dongxing Heaven Emperor. Your Majesty, thank you for your kindness. It's just that this junior truly doesn't like to be restrained. I can only let down your Majesty's kindness. Since everyone felt that this was a favor, Qin Wentian could only say that he had let down the Dongxing Heaven Emperor's kindness. With such an attitude, these immortal kings had nothing to say, right? Truly unable to tell good from bad. Your Majesty, this young man is unteachable. Deep Flame coldly spoke. The Dongxing Heaven Emperor no longer glanced at Qin Wentian. He turned to Dongxing Ting, who was at the side, and spoke. Send everyone back to the lower realms. After speaking, his silhouette flickered, directly bringing his disciple Tianyi away, vanishing from sight in an instant. Let's go. Everyone farewell. The undying immortal king clasped his hands to the immortal kings. Beauty myriad incarnations, let's meet again when we have time? Someone called out to the myriad incarnations immortal king. It's fine, I still have to bring my disciple back. The myriad incarnations immortal king smiled. That immortal king cast a jealous glance at Hua Taishu as he laughed. This little fellow is truly fortunate, having a beautiful immortal king to teach him. Ha! After speaking, his silhouette flickered as he directly departed. Let's go. The myriad incarnations immortal king brought Hua Taishu away. By Wuya, why didn't you accept him as your disciple? Deep flame swept a glance at Qin Wentian, as an expression of mockery flickered in his eyes. After which he left with his disciple Blackpeak. Bai Wuya glanced at him, but didn't bother with him. After which he transmitted his voice to Qin Wentian. Let's meet again in the immortal realms. After speaking, his silhouette flickered as he also departed from this place. In the blink of an eye, the banquet was over, leaving behind only Qin Wentian and his companions, standing there alone, appearing somewhat conspicuous. Beams of immortal light shot out, connecting the immortal palace to the lower world. After passing by the 9 mountains, Dongxing Ting walked towards the battle drum. He glanced at Qin Wentian as a voice rang out in Qin Wentian's mind. A frog at the bottom of a well, not knowing how high the heavens are. Wanting to climb up to the heavens with a single step, what a fool's dream. These words were clearly spoken to Qin Wentian alone. Qin Wentian frowned as he inclined his head and stared at Dongxing Ting. Would he really have a chance to enter the tutelage of the Dongxing Heaven Emperor, and receive the care of the Dongxing Heaven Emperor? Would the Dongxing Heaven Emperor really do what Bai Wuya said, Qing Er's father wanted him to do? Maybe right from the start, it was impossible. A mocking smile appeared on his face. It was unknown if he was mocking himself or Dongxing Ting, wanting to climb up to the heavens with a single step? Was this sentence referring to Qing or the Dongxing Heaven Emperor? Or maybe it was both. This time, my royal father's disciple recruitment has ended. The immortal kings have also accepted 4 people as their disciples. For those who didn't manage to obtain any good fortune, you can return now. Dongxing Ting's voice rang out through the entire royal sacred region. The people on the 9 mountains sighed in their hearts as they walked towards the light. Before this, it was from the bottom to the top. Now it was from the top to the bottom. Qin Wentian and his companions also stepped into a beam of light. After which, an intense spatial fluctuation enveloped them, and in the next instant, the spatial energy enveloped them as they descended to the lower world. In just an instant, their feet landed on the ground of the royal sacred region. Inclining his head, he stared at the sky. On the 9 mountains, the silhouettes of the people on them gradually vanished. The immortal palaces in the sky were faintly discernible as they gradually faded away, vanishing completely from sight. This time around, the Dongxing Heaven Emperor's disciple recruitment finally came to an end. Qin Wentian stood on the ground. He finally returned to this place and missed the opportunity to head to the immortal realms. However, he had no regrets in his heart. The all heavens immortal realms. Qin Wentian mumbled. After that, his silhouette flickered as he flew towards a certain direction. Similarly, in the royal sacred region, Zaixian also landed on the ground. He stared at the disappearing immortal palaces in the sky, but there wasn't much disappointment in his eyes. Qin Wentian was eventually given up as well. He stood alone at the side. Not a single person was willing to accept him as a disciple. Those guests from the immortal realms were all sighing in their hearts. This time around, the Eastern Sage Emperor's disciple recruitment had caused such a huge commotion. Although there weren't many people from the immortal realms, it was still too difficult to be accepted as a disciple by the Dongxing Heaven Emperor. Ultimately, only one person managed to obtain the good fortune. Now they could only return. Chapter 725. After the matter of the Dongxing Heaven Emperor accepting a disciple concluded, The people of the royal sacred region fell into a frenzy of cultivation. After personally witnessing the heaven-defying might, the hearts of millions and millions of people grew even more fervent. The sacred royal city was the core region of the royal sacred region. In fact, many people even started to join the Medicine Sovereign Valley. Right now, the Medicine Sovereign Valley was openly accepting disciples, and had already declared that they would be on equal footing with the royal sacred sect. The news of the battle back then had already circulated, and the Medicine Sovereign Valley wasn't inferior to the royal sacred sect at all. And in addition to the news of Zai Xian helping the immortal cultivators to abduct young girls, the reputation of the royal sacred sect had long been tainted. However, there were still many rumors regarding Qin Wentian circulating around the royal sacred region. Qin Wentian had almost obtained the favor of the Eastern Sage Immortal Emperor, and was accepted as a disciple. However, the Eastern Sage Immortal Emperor discovered that Qin Wentian's character was lacking, hence he rejected him. Qin Wentian was a sinister and cunning man. Even the Eastern Sage Immortal Emperor looked down on him, abandoning him because of his character. This matter caused quite a commotion in the Holy Royal City. Many people were discussing it. After all, they had clearly seen what had happened in the Celestial Land Immortal Palace. This explanation made sense. For a period of time, Qin Wentian's reputation was doubted by many. However, with regards to this, Qin Wentian didn't reply at all. There were also people who said that Qin Wentian was humiliated in the Immortal Palace, and was probably thinking of revenge now. However, those were supreme existences of the immortal realms. Especially so for Qin Wentian. How could he take revenge? The royal sacred sect naturally fanned the flames. Regardless of the Medicine Sovereign Valley or Qin Wentian himself, they couldn't be bothered to care. Ever since the Dongxing Heaven Emperor accepted a disciple, Qin Wentian had never appeared in the outside world again. In the blink of an eye, half a year passed. In a certain illusory location in the royal sacred region, a majestic immortal palace flickered in and out of existence. It was as though it could melt into the void, disappearing and reappearing occasionally. Once, there were supreme existences who used their perception to scan the entire royal sacred region. Before this, they discovered something, but when their perception probed further, they discovered nothing at all. Hence, they didn't probe any further. After all, his perception could encompass an entire particle world, and countless images were imprinted into his mind. There was simply too much information, and it was very normal for mistakes to occur occasionally. However, if one were to sense it up close, they would discover that there seemed to be a mysterious ripple around the immortal palace. It seemed to be sealing the space around the immortal palace, making it seem as if the space here did not exist. In this celestial palace, Dtion's figure sat cross-legged on a slope. Above him floated a dazzling painting scroll. It was mysterious, unfathomable, and difficult to understand. Dtion's entire being seemed to be immersed within. In the painting, numerous runic lights cascaded downwards, unceasingly surrounding Dtion, or even directly entering his body. The runic lights were ever-changing, as though there were millions upon millions of transformations within it. It was truly unfathomable. At this moment, Dtion waved his hands in the painting scroll. Instantly, an intense runic imprint appeared, transforming into a mysterious and unfathomable energy that was extremely wondrous. How difficult. It's been so long, but there's basically no way for me to completely comprehend it. It feels like I just entered this vast sealed world, Dtion mused. He only had a year's time. Even if he passed the test and reached this place, as long as he couldn't comprehend it within a year's time, his memories of entering this immortal palace would be erased, and he would be expelled from this place. The flowing light in this painting scroll is like divine inscriptions, with a myriad of transformations, combining together to form a wondrous energy. Dtion stared at the sky as he continued to work hard in his comprehension. As his cultivation base grew stronger, his ability to comprehend divine inscriptions also grew stronger. Back then, when he was cultivating the spiritual refinement method, the feeling he got from cultivating it grew even more intense. The spiritual refinement method allowed the astral energy in one's body to transform into divine energy. Each grain of divine energy, was a divine imprint. For example, the palm imprint divine energy could transform into a palm imprint when attacking. The sword divine energy could transform into a sharp sword when attacking. Such an attack was extremely similar to innate techniques. It was as though innate techniques were a type of transformation of divine inscriptions, borrowing the power of attributes. Astral souls were able to give Wuxia additional attributes: force attribute, dream attribute, windfire attribute, lightning attribute, and so on. The moment he stepped onto the path of cultivation, the tiny astral being had given him a memory of the spiritual refinement method. From this, one could see how important this technique was. Divine inscriptions could be used in combat, and could also be used to inscribe formations. Regardless of whether it was combat divine inscriptions or inscribing formations, they all had the same effect as innate techniques. It was as though they originated from the same source, and were a type of utilization of the energy of heaven and earth, as well as one's own attributes. The only difference was that they were utilized in different directions. And now, the energy within this mysterious and powerful painting, that boundless runic light, was also a type of divine inscription. Sealing isn't any different from other types of energy. It's just a type of attribute, just like wind, fire, and lightning. Now that I have a sealing astral soul, I naturally have the ability to seal attributes. As long as I unravel the mysteries of these runic lights, I would be able to comprehend the secrets of this painting. Qin Wentian mused. Di Tian sank into contemplation as he thought. The reason why seals are so powerful is because other than elemental energy, they also borrowed the energy of heaven and earth. It's just like formations, extremely complicated. If I were to go from simple to complex, I would finally be able to comprehend it. As he thought of this, Di Tian started to re-examine the painting, starting to ponder and comprehend it from a different angle. Time flowed by unknowingly. It was so in the Immortal Palace, and it was the same in the external world as well. In the Medicine Sovereign Valley, Qin Wentian had never stopped cultivating. After stepping into the celestial phenomenon realm, he could already feel the difficulty of his cultivation. Right now, for every step he wanted to take, other than absorbing and refining a vast amount of astral energy, he also needed to comprehend the energy of his true intent, as well as the power of his constellation. The deeper his comprehension of his true intent, the more perfect his constellation would be. Right now, Qin Wentian's original body had already comprehended his third and fourth constellation. The first constellation was known as the Dreamworld constellation, born from his great dream's astral soul. It was a domain-type constellation that could pull people into a trance, unable to extricate themselves from it. The space within the constellation was filled with destructive energy that was infused with true intent. The second constellation was known as the Slaughter Sword constellation, born from his sword-type astral soul. It contained an extremely powerful destructive might, capable of annihilating everything. The third constellation was known as the Summon constellation, born from his demon sovereign astral soul. It was able to summon extremely powerful demonic beasts for battle. The fourth constellation was known as the Suppression Annihilation constellation, born from his fifth astral soul, the Suppression astral soul. This was the last constellation he had comprehended, and it contained an unfathomable might. After comprehending his fourth constellation, the only remaining constellation that Qin Wentian hadn't condensed was the Heavenly Hammer astral soul. It wasn't that he couldn't condense it, it was just that from Qin Wentian's perspective, having 4 constellations was already sufficient. Even if he tried to condense another constellation using his Heavenly Hammer astral soul, it wouldn't have any effect on his combat prowess. Other than comprehending his 4th constellation, Qin Wentian also spent quite a bit of time on other aspects of his cultivation. He didn't even think about the matter of the Dongxing Heaven Emperor accepting a disciple back then, nor did he have the energy to care about the gossip in the outside world. This was a world where strength was revered. When he was suppressed by others, everyone would despise him. But when he stood at an unprecedented height, the people of the world would only prostrate themselves in worship. You finally know how to rest. A beautiful silhouette walked towards Qin Wentian with a gentle smile on her face. Let me loosen my muscles a little. Qin Wentian walked to Mo Qingqing's side, wrapping his arms around her slender waist as an expression of enjoyment appeared on his face. Lecher. Mo Qingqing's lips twitched. So what if I'm a lecher? Qin Wentian hugged her even tighter. Mo Qingqing leaned into Qin Wentian's embrace as she spoke in a gentle voice. Many people in the outside world are talking about you. There are even people saying that you have gone to the immortal realms. It has been such a long time since you last appeared. Let them say whatever they want. In any case, I already plan to head to the immortal realms. Qin Wentian casually spoke. Ever since he knew that the royal sacred region was a particle world, a country bumpkin world, Qin Wentian had always wanted to go out and see how vast the immortal realms truly were. A true man's ambition was to roam the world. Let alone the fact that he still had the unknown mission of his parents. He still had to find Qing. No matter what, he had to go out. Can you bring me along with you? Mo Qingqing inclined her head and stared at Qin Wentian. Her gaze seemed to be able to melt everything. She was truly worried. The immortal realms, to her, seemed to be too far away. Silly lass. Qin Wentian lightly kissed Mo Qingqing's forehead. After that he spoke. Let's go out for a walk. Sure. Mo Qingqing nodded. Qin Wentian pulled her hand as their silhouettes flashed, heading towards the exit of the Medicine Sovereign Valley, not alerting anyone else. Taking a stroll in the sacred royal city, breathing in the fresh air, Qin Wentian and Mo Qingqing were like ordinary people holding hands as they walked. Many people involuntarily turned their gazes over. There was no other reason. These two were simply too stunning. Qin Wentian's demeanor and Mo Qingqing's beauty. In addition, how many people in the royal sacred region didn't know of Qin Wentian? Back then in the immortal palace in the sky, everyone in the world had seen him before. Many people were already whispering to each other. This must be Qin Wentian and Mo Qingqing. Mo Qingqing is truly very beautiful. To think that Qin Wentian is still in the sacred royal city. Back then, the Dongxing Heaven Emperor abandoned him. I wonder if it was because of his character or his talent. It's rumored that back then when Qin Wentian was humiliated, he went into closed-door seclusion for half a year. Seems like his mood isn't bad at all. Speaking of which, Qin Wentian is also a character exuding magnificence throughout the generations. In the entire royal sacred region, there aren't many who can compare to him. He can even contend against the geniuses of the immortal realms. The voices of many drifted into Qin Wentian's perception, causing Qin Wentian to smile bitterly in his heart. It wasn't a good thing to be too famous. It was just that he couldn't even take a walk in peace. Chapter 726. Seems like I really have to leave. Qin Wentian sighed in his heart. Although the royal sacred region was boundlessly vast, to the current him, it had already restricted his growth. It was still better for him to head to the immortal realms. In the past, Qin Wentian had never thought of leaving so early. Most probably, this thought appeared in his mind because of the commotion caused by the Eastern Sage Immortal Sect's disciple recruitment. At this moment, Qin Wentian turned his gaze towards the horizons only to hear rumbling sounds in that direction. The powerful fluctuations of astral energy had no way to hide from his perception, as several people rushed over in that direction. At this moment, Qin Wentian furrowed his brows. He pulled Mo Qingqing's hand and moved forward. An instant later, they arrived at the origin of the fluctuations. This place was a flourishing place with inns in great numbers. However, right now, the buildings had all collapsed and many inns were reduced to rubble. Many people stood in the surroundings as they observed. Up ahead, several experts were currently fighting. The resplendent constellations caused people to sigh in admiration. The constellations of celestial phenomenon ascendants were truly wondrous, containing terrifying might. Senior Lin Shuai, Sister Ling Shuang. Qin Wentian stared at the people fighting. He was actually acquainted with a few of them. Lin Shuai, Lu Bingyu, Ji Feixue and Yi Ling Shuang. As for those fighting against them, the vast majority of them were experts proficient in the mandate of thunder and earth. Compared to those from the Battle Sword sect, they had the advantage in terms of numbers. Also, the ages of both sides weren't very old. Many of them were young. The 9 great sects are fighting again. During this past year, the conflicts between the various sects seem to be intentionally or unintentionally targeting the Battle Sword sect. Seems like it's true that the Royal Sacred Sect is ostracizing the Battle Sword faction. Someone's voice drifted into Qin Wentian's ears, causing him to furrow his brows. Back then when Zai Qiu killed Qin, he had already formed a grudge with the Battle Sword faction. But as a subsidiary sect of the Royal Sacred Sect, the Battle Sword faction had no choice but to swallow their anger. But it didn't mean that it was useless for them to swallow their anger. Regardless of the Battle Sword faction within the Royal Sacred Sect, or the Battle Sword sect which was one of the 9 great sects outside the Royal Sacred Sect, they were all being ostracized by the other factions. However, the people of the Battle Sword faction were truly intelligent. The upper echelons of the Battle Sword faction had never truly clashed with the core members of the Royal Sacred Sect. None of them betrayed the Battle Sword faction, choosing to endure and endure. The Royal Sacred Sect already had their eyes on them, and who knew when they would act against them? How could they not endure? Among the combatants, Yi Lingshuang from the Battle Sword sect was one of the weaker ones. An expert from the Violet Thunder sect was steadily suppressing her. His palms manifested the power of lightning as he laughed. The people of the Battle Sword sect are truly loyal. Yi Lingshuang's father, Yi Qingyan, has already publicly declared war against the Royal Sacred Sect. We want to capture this lass, but you guys are actually still protecting her? Are you not afraid that the Royal Sacred Sect will blame us for this? That's a matter of the father's generation. Do you want to push this debt onto junior apprentice sister Yi Lingshuang? Ji Feishue coldly snorted. In truth, Yi Lingshuang had long left the Battle Sword sect and followed her father to Yi. It was just that recently, there would often be experts appearing in Yi. Yi Lingshuang wanted to pay a visit to the Medicine Sovereign Valley, and coincidentally met Lin Shuai and the others who were also in the Sacred Royal City. Hence, they decided to head over together. The group of them gathered together only to be provoked by those from the Violet Thunder sect and Great Earth sect. A son must pay his father's debts. It's the same for a daughter. That person had a teasing look in his eyes as he stared at Yi Lingshuang. However, given how sexy Yi Lingshuang is, I really can't bear to kill her directly. You are shameless. Yi Lingshuang icily replied. Haha, there's something even more shameless. That person's palms danced with lightning as he slowly walked towards Yi Lingshuang. Lin Shuai and the other experts were all restricted. They had no way to save Yi Lingshuang. At this moment, a beam of sword chi swept over with a speed even faster than lightning. Who is it? That person abruptly turned around. A terrifying sword whistled through the air, causing sonic booms to erupt. The terrifying sharp sword brought with it a destructive force as it slashed over. That person's hands danced about as the power of thunder exploded forth. However, the sharp sword slashed down, directly penetrating the head of that person, killing him. This scene caused many who were in combat to halt. Their gazes turned over only to see 2 silhouettes exuding magnificence through the generations stepping through the air. Qin Wentian. Upon seeing the appearance of these two, the countenances of many turned cold. Has the Battle Sword sect already colluded with the enemy of the Royal Sacred Sect, Qin Wentian? An expert from the Great Earth sect coldly spoke as he stared at Lin Shuai. I've long left the Battle Sword sect. The matters of the Battle Sword sect have nothing to do with me. It's just that Yi Lingshuang is my foster sister. You guys actually dared to bully her? You all deserve death. As the sound of Qin Wentian's voice faded, a surge of killing intent gushed forth. The Royal Sacred Sect seemed to be finding an excuse to deal with the Battle Sword sect. He naturally wanted to draw a clear line between him and the Battle Sword sect. The experts from the Violet Thunder sect and Great Earth sect all had trepidation in their eyes when they stared at Qin Wentian. This person's combat prowess was so strong that the core faction of the Royal Sacred Sect didn't dare to accept his challenge. Within the 3rd level of Celestial Phenomenon, there was no one who could be his opponent. And right now, the strongest among them was only at the 3rd level of Celestial Phenomenon. Let alone the fact that Qin Wentian had the backing of the Medicine Sovereign Valley. Back then you were humiliated in the Immortal Palace, yet you still dare to be so arrogant? The Royal Sacred Sect will definitely hunt you down. A person coldly spoke. Do you guys have the qualifications to enter the Immortal Palace? A mocking expression appeared on Qin Wentian's face. After which, he released his dream world constellation and swept his gaze over everyone. In an instant, the experts on the other side all felt as though they had entered a domain of their own. Qin Wentian, you. That expert from the Great Earth Sect roared in rage. He didn't expect that Qin Wentian would directly act, using a domain-type constellation to trap them within. Anyone who dares to touch my family and friends will be killed without mercy. Qin Wentian coldly snorted. It was unknown if he was speaking to these people, or to the entire Royal Sacred Sect. As the sound of his voice faded, a second constellation manifested as countless terrifying sharp swords descended from the constellation, suppressing everything in its path. No. A person screamed miserably. Before the sword could kill him, that supreme suppressive sword might had already descended, directly causing his body to disintegrate. After that, fresh blood gushed out as his body was torn apart. Slaughter! Qin Wentian roared, ignoring all defenses. Instantly, numerous silhouettes died one after another, and in the blink of an eye, only a few remained. They were all using their own powerful constellations to defend against the attacks. As for that third-level ascendant from the Great Earth Sect, his body was clad in an armor of flowing light, as a screen of light enveloped him within. Humph! Qin Wentian snorted. With an intention of his will, numerous terrifying gigantic swords manifested from his constellation, directly slamming into his surroundings. After which, a surge of destructive energy gushed forth, tearing apart the flowing light armor. The experts inside all had looks of terror on their faces as they stared at Qin Wentian in terror. No. Accompanied by a fearful roar, the sword chi slammed down and tore him apart. For those who were still alive, their bodies trembled unceasingly because of the intense terror. But very swiftly, they too followed the footsteps of the others, directly slain by the sword chi. Qin Wentian waved his hand as the resplendent constellation directly vanished into thin air. However, the people in the surroundings were all stunned speechless. How powerful! Was this the strength of the young man exuding magnificence throughout the generations in the Royal Sacred Region? Not only that, he didn't even use his full strength. With a wave of his hand, he killed everyone with his constellation. It was as though the constellations of his opponents couldn't even withstand a single strike from him. It's rumored that after stepping into the celestial phenomenon realm, because of the different constellations condensed, the disparity in combat prowess would be greatly widened. Seems like this rumor is true. Qin Wentian didn't even need to use his true strength. Just by relying on his constellation, he was able to kill everyone, including those 2 levels higher than him. This is simply too powerful. This is the disparity between a supreme genius and an ordinary genius. There's no way to make up for it. Someone mused. Only now did they understand that no matter what happened to Qin Wentian back then in the Immortal Palace, his opponents were all supreme existences of the immortal realms. Even if Qin Wentian was truly humiliated, in the Royal Sacred Region, no matter where he went, he would still be a character that radiated boundless radiance. There was no one in the same generation who could contend against him. Wentian awesome. Lin Shuai praised. He was also a heaven's chosen, and had a resounding reputation in the Royal Sacred Region. However, this young man before him was simply too outstanding, directly overshadowing his magnificence. Lu Bingyu had broken through to celestial phenomenon not long ago, but when she saw the might of Qin Wentian, she couldn't help but feel complicated in her heart. Her clear eyes stared at Qin Wentian's face. Senior brother Lin Shuai, how's the battle sword sect? Qin Wentian transmitted his voice to Lin Shuai. Upon hearing his question, Lin Shuai furrowed his brows as he replied. Right now, the Royal Sacred Sect is moving about frequently. I keep having a bad premonition that something major is about to happen. Maybe, the Royal Sacred Sect didn't act because they lacked an excuse. But if they really want to deal with the Battle Sword Sect, they can just directly accuse us of a crime. Qin Wentian nodded his head in agreement. If the Royal Sacred Sect really wanted to deal with the Battle Sword Sect, there was no need for an excuse. In any case, the Royal Sacred Sect had already fallen from the status of a divine detective. Their reputation was damaged. What they truly wanted now was to recover their strength to the point where no one could contend against them. Only then would they be able to dominate the world. The Medicine Sovereign Valley blocked the path of the Royal Sacred Sect. If the Royal Sacred Sect made a move, they would definitely want to destroy the Medicine Sovereign Valley the most. During this half a year, the Royal Sacred Sect didn't make any big moves. Although the Sacred Royal City seems calm, there's a high possibility that they are preparing in the dark. Lin Shuai transmitted his voice again. Qin Wentian nodded his head as he asked, "In that case, does the Old Ancestor and the Battle Sword Sect have any plans?" The Royal Sacred Sect is keeping a tight watch on the Battle Sword Sect. There's no way for them to act recklessly. It's even more impossible for them to leave the Royal Sacred Sect directly. They are stuck in a dilemma. We can only endure and resign ourselves to fate. They intend to get us to pay our respects to Senior Medicine Sovereign and ask him to send us out of the Royal Sacred Region. Lin Shuai replied, his words causing Qin Wentian's heart to tremble. Seems like the Battle Sword Sect was already preparing a path of retreat. Chapter 727. In the Medicine Sovereign Valley, Qin Wentian and the rest slowly walked over, directly heading towards the palace where the Medicine Sovereign resided in. Right now, the Medicine Sovereign Valley had recruited many geniuses from the Royal Sacred Region, and was flourishing. When they saw Qin Wentian and Mo Qingsheng, their eyes all shone with a bright light. Although they had joined the Medicine Sovereign Valley, there weren't many chances for them to see the two of them personally. That seems to be Lin Shuai, Ji Feixue, and Lu Bingyu. Why are they here as well? Someone had a puzzled expression on his face as he stared at the group flying through the air. Although the Battle Sword Sect had a close relationship with Qin Wentian, the Battle Sword Sect was still considered a subsidiary power of the Royal Sacred Sect, and the Medicine Sovereign Valley stood in opposition to the Royal Sacred Sect. Even if it was to avoid arousing suspicion, the people from the Battle Sword Sect shouldn't have come here. In fact, Qin Wentian had already considered this point. But after hearing Lin Shuai's words, he no longer hesitated. The Royal Sacred Sect had already started to monitor the Battle Sword Sect, and it was only a matter of time before they made their move against the Battle Sword faction. It didn't matter if they avoided arousing suspicion or not. Their silhouettes stopped in the courtyard outside the Medicine Sovereign's palace, as they stood there quietly. An instant later, the Medicine Sovereign walked out from his room. The commotion outside couldn't be hidden from him. "You're finally willing to come out." The Medicine Sovereign stroked his beard as he smiled at Qin Wentian. "It's been a long time since I paid a visit to Senior." Qin Wentian laughed. The Medicine Sovereign glanced at Lin Shuai and the rest as a smile that was not a smile appeared on his face. "I've helped you raise those two little fellows for so long. Yet you still haven't come to bring them away? You must have something you need me for, right?" Little Rascal and Purgatory would only be able to grow better under Senior's care. Qin Wentian awkwardly laughed. "Stop flattering me. The last time I went out, my pill furnace was completely destroyed by that little bastard. Yet, it directly fell asleep and wouldn't wake up even if it fell onto the ground." As the Medicine Sovereign spoke, he waved his hand. An instant later, a snow-white puppy appeared in his hand. The body of this puppy shone with an indistinct golden light, as though it was in a deep sleep. Seeing how the Medicine Sovereign was fuming with rage as he grabbed Little Rascal's tail and swung it back and forth, Qin Wentian couldn't help but perspire. This old man's desire for revenge was truly too strong. Little Rascal just needs to be taught a lesson. With Senior taking care of him, I can be at ease. Qin Wentian could only smile when he saw the depressed expression on the Medicine Sovereign's face. At this moment, a beam of multicolored light flashed as the cry of a vermilion bird rang out. From the roof of the Medicine Sovereign's room, a resplendent demonic beast could be seen flying over. Its body shone with resplendent multicolored light, and upon seeing Qin Wentian, joy could be seen in its eyes. Its body revolved above Qin Wentian, and its beak would occasionally peck at Qin Wentian. "Don't worry, I won't stop worrying." The Medicine Sovereign blew on his beard. With a flick of his hand, Little rascal was directly flung onto the ground. However, it was still sleeping peacefully, as though nothing could disturb its sleep. Speak, what's the matter? The medicine sovereign asked. Senior medicine sovereign. The royal sacred sect has already started to monitor our battle sword sect and Yi country. Lin Shui spoke. Master and ancestor initially wanted to ask Senior to send us out of the royal sacred region. But Junior wishes to consult Senior. Do you have any methods to resolve this? The medicine sovereign furrowed his brows. As expected, the royal sacred sect wouldn't let this matter rest so easily. This concerned whether they could control a particle world or not. Those sacred emperors who walked out of the royal sacred region would definitely not allow other powers to threaten their position. Seems like the royal sacred sect was preparing to act. Master! Mo Qingqing called out. The medicine sovereign glanced at his disciple as he spoke. Lass, why don't you side with that fellow Qin Wentian now? Master, this also concerns our medicine sovereign valley. I'm afraid the royal sacred sect wants to deal with us the most. Mo Qingqing spoke. That's true. Things are going to be troublesome. The medicine sovereign furrowed his brows, as though he was worried. The royal sacred sect has already controlled this world for tens of thousands of years. Although there weren't many who managed to break through to the immortal ranked realm, there were still a few generations of sacred emperors who managed to do so. The royal sacred sect was defeated in the previous battle, and they would definitely not let this matter rest so easily. This generation's sacred emperor knows that he has no way to deal with the immortal ranked puppet and me. Hence, he would definitely invite the previous sacred emperors to return to the royal sacred sect. Senior, what should we do? Qin Wentian asked. What do you think? The medicine sovereign counter-asked. Now that things have come to this, the royal sacred region can no longer contain two hegemonic powers. One of them will definitely be destroyed. We can only start a war now. Qin Wentian spoke, his words causing the others to fall silent. Were they really going to start a war against the royal sacred sect? In the previous battle, we used the puppets to fight against the experts of the royal sacred sect and obtained victory. But in reality, the number of experts sent out by the royal sacred sect was still too little. If the entire royal sacred sect mobilized their full strength, we would definitely be in an awkward situation. And once the two generations of sacred emperors appear, the upper echelons of the royal sacred sect would be at a disadvantage. The medicine sovereign's words caused everyone to feel a sense of pressure. After which, he turned to Qin Wentian and the others and continued. The best solution is for me to send all of you away before the royal sacred sect acts. Can the Xuanwu puppets contend against the sacred emperors? Qin Wentian furrowed his brows. At this moment, his thoughts of leaving had actually dimmed a little. Since the situation wasn't resolved, he could leave with a clear conscience. Although the Xuanwu puppets are immortal-ranked puppets and can sweep through those below the immortal realm, they can only defend against the sacred emperors. There's no way they can suppress the sacred emperors. They would only be in a passive situation. The medicine sovereign spoke. The previous generation's sacred emperor hasn't returned yet, right? Qin Wentian asked in a low voice. I don't think so. But since the royal sacred sect has already made their move, they would most probably return soon. The medicine sovereign replied. Before that, let's strengthen ourselves first and save the battlesword faction as well as the country of Yi, making them stand on our side. How about it? Qin Wentian stared at the medicine sovereign. Given the actions of the royal sacred sect, they most probably wouldn't spare the battlesword faction and the country of Yi. They had to start a war before the royal sacred sect acted. The medicine sovereign stared at Qin Wentian as a faint smile appeared in his eyes. You are truly audacious. We don't have any other choice. Since the war is going to start sooner or later, why don't we take the initiative? Qin Wentian drew in a deep breath. There was no other way out. Senior Lin Shui and the rest are already here. If we delay any longer, I'm afraid the royal sacred sect would make their move earlier than expected. The medicine sovereign stared at Qin Wentian as he stroked his beard. After which he smiled. Fine, I will listen to you. Who asked this old man to owe you? However, everything is up to you. No matter what the consequences are, don't regret it. Many thanks, Medicine Sovereign. Qin Wentian saw the Medicine Sovereign nodding his head in agreement. When do we act? You already said that we have to make use of our time. Let's do it now. I will gather my men and set off now. You should come along as well. The Medicine Sovereign laughed. After which, a terrifying aura enveloped the entire Medicine Sovereign Valley. An instant later, the experts of the Medicine Sovereign Valley all moved towards a certain direction. The guesses of the Medicine Sovereign and Qin Wentian weren't wrong. Right now, the Royal Sacred Sect had already gathered the experts of the 9 great sections. Even the experts from the Violet Thunder Sect and Great Earth Sect were all gathered in the Sacred Royal City. This was why the scene of the Violet Thunder Sect and Great Earth Sect ganging up on Lin Shuai and the rest appeared. The news of Qin Wentian appearing once again, protecting Lin Shuai and the rest, and killing the experts from the Violet Thunder Sect and Great Earth Sect soon spread to the Royal Sacred Sect. In a great hall of the core faction, all the upper echelons of the Royal Sacred Sect were gathered here. Even the Sacred Prince Zai Xian was present. Lin Shuai, Ji Feixue and the rest have colluded with Qin Wentian and entered the Medicine Sovereign Valley. Everyone, what do you think we should do? An expert of virtue and prestige asked. He was the vice-sect leader of the core faction, Sovereign Yan. He had great authority and was extremely powerful. I'm afraid the Battle Sword sect has already betrayed us. It's about time for us to clean up the sect. The leader of the Violet Thunder sect, who was also the vice-sect leader of the Royal Sacred Sect, replied. Indeed, it's about time to act. If we delay any longer, there might be unforeseen circumstances. The leader of the Grand Shang faction agreed. His eyes were cold as his killing intent intensified. The old Sacred Emperor has already sent word that he would bring people here to destroy the Medicine Sovereign Valley within a month. But now that there are traitors among us, it's indeed about time to clean them up. Zai Yan's countenance was cold. They had always been waiting for the old Sacred Emperor to arrive. Only then would they be able to sweep through the Medicine Sovereign Valley, killing the traitors. But now, it seemed that the time had to be brought forward. You guys immediately return and gather your subordinates. After the time it takes for an incense stick to burn, we will surround the Battle Sword sect and clean up the traitors. Zai Yan stood up, his countenance was as cold as ice. Yes, Roger. The eyes of many flickered with excitement. They had long wanted to get rid of the Battle Sword faction. Now that the upper echelons had made up their minds, they might as well wipe out the Battle Sword faction in one fell swoop. Right now, the atmosphere in the Battle Sword faction was extremely stifling. They naturally discovered that the Royal Sacred Sect had already started to monitor them. This caused them to be extremely disappointed. Back then, Quin's death was because Zai Qiu had let them down, killing a genius of their faction. They knew that there was no way for them to seek justice, and could only endure it. However, because of this, the core faction also bore a grudge against them. In addition to the fact that Qin Wentian was from the Battle Sword sect, he didn't care about the face of the Royal Sacred Sect at all, causing them to lose all face. The Royal Sacred Sect would make a move against them sooner or later. This was something they knew very well in their hearts. At this moment, in one of the pavilions of the Battle Sword faction, the eyes of the old ancestor of the Battle Sword sect abruptly opened. He could sense that more and more people were approaching, surrounding them. His aged eyes flickered with an intense sense of sorrow. Was the Royal Sacred Sect finally going to act against them? Numerous terrifying auras gushed over, sweeping through the buildings of the Battle Sword faction. At this instant, the people of the Battle Sword faction all inclined their heads, their countenances incredibly unsightly to behold. Suit Song. A voice thundered through the air, like thunder from a clear sky, directly calling out the name of the old ancestor of the Battle Sword faction. Suit Song was none other than the old ancestor of the Battle Sword faction. At this moment, he soared up into the air and stared at the silhouettes surrounding them as he coldly asked, I, Suit Song, have never done anything that let down the Royal Sacred Sect. But in the end, the Royal Sacred Sect still wants to annihilate us. Such inhumanity. Aren't you afraid of being despised by the entire world? The old ancestor straightened his back. He didn't argue or beg for mercy. Even if he had to die, he would die standing. The battle sword faction has colluded with the enemy of the royal sacred sect, the Medicine Sovereign Valley. Yet you still dare to boast so shamelessly? Sootsong, on account of the fact that you are the vice sect leader of our royal sacred sect, we don't wish to massacre you all. Just commit suicide yourselves. For those below the Heavenly Dipper realm, we can spare your lives. Zai Yan's voice was cold, his words causing a look of sorrow to appear on Sootsong's face. For those below the Heavenly Dipper realm? How many of them would be able to survive? Chapter 728. The experts of the battle sword sect gradually gathered. When they heard Zai Yan's words, their countenances all turned pale. Those at the Heavenly Dipper realm and above would all be executed. How cruel was this? The royal sacred sect is truly ridiculous. Someone's eyes turned red as he roared. We have yet to do anything that would let down our sect, yet they want to annihilate all of us? How cruel! After we die, let's see how long the royal sacred sect can last. Are you guys not prepared to commit suicide? Since this is the case, let's kill all of you without mercy. Zai Yan's eyes were cold, he had no emotions at all. The reason why the royal sacred sect gathered the 9 great sects was to make it easier for them to rule the world. But if there were any sects that threatened the royal sacred sect and didn't listen to them, they naturally had to find a way to support other powers. Commit suicide? Why don't they just get the sacred emperor to act? Wouldn't it be much easier to kill us? Sootsong's heart was cold, he knew that there was only one option left. Why is there a need to trouble the sacred emperor for such a trivial matter? Zai Yan lifted his palm as his voice thundered through the air. The royal sacred sect has decreed that the battle sword sect has colluded with the enemy and betrayed the sect. All of you shall be executed. Kill. Kill, kill, kill. The sound waves of killing intent shook the heavens and earth. After which, countless experts stepped out, slaughtering their way into the battle sword sect, surrounding them from all directions. Their auras were so powerful that they could destroy everything. The experts of the Violet Thunder sect gathered in one direction. Violet light illuminated the skies as a gigantic violet sword over 10,000 meters in length appeared in the air, exuding an incomparably violent destructive might. The elders of the Violet Thunder sect personally infused their astral energy into this sword. Upon sensing the violent aura, Sootsong abruptly turned his gaze over as he roared in rage. Nine Thunder, you will die a horrible death. Nine Thunder was the leader of the Violet Thunder sect, the vice-sect leader of the Royal Sacred Sect. His robes were all embroidered with lightning diagrams, and his eyes gleamed with the power of lightning. He waved his hands as he coldly laughed. You guys won't be lonely on the road to the Yellow Springs. The 10,000-meter-long gigantic lightning sword slashed down, causing rumbling sounds of destruction to echo out unceasingly, wanting to destroy everything. The spectators below were all horrified. Everywhere the gigantic sword passed by, everything was destroyed. Many experts from the battle sword sect were directly torn apart into nothingness. The violet gigantic sword slammed into the territory of the battle sword faction, causing the earth to split apart. It was unknown how many experts died instantly, causing the eyes of those from the battle sword faction to turn red as their killing intent towered up into the sky. But at this moment, they were already too busy to even care about themselves. The experts from the various factions of the Royal Sacred Sect had already surrounded them. The number of experts was more than 10 to 1, and when they pressed down, it would definitely be a devastating blow to the battle sword faction. Sootsong. A cold voice drifted over. The old ancestor of the battle sword sect, Sootsong, inclined his head only to see a golden eye in the air. A resplendent golden constellation manifested, as though there were countless pupils within. Shang-Ying. Sootsong stared at the sky with his sword in hand. His surroundings seemed to have transformed into a sword domain. Shang-Ying was the old emperor of Grand Shang. After he abdicated, he came to the Royal Sacred Sect to take up the position of vice-sect leader. He spent most of his time peacefully cultivating, trying to break through to the Sacred Emperor realm. The battle sword faction will be annihilated for sure. Shang-Ying coldly spoke. His golden eyes shone with a boundless light, capable of tearing apart everything. At this instant, Sutsong's entire being was immersed in a golden world of eye techniques, struggling within. Break. Sutsong coldly snorted. His sword slashed out, arcing through the heavens and earth. Many of the golden eyes in the air were directly shattered as the two of them engaged in a fierce battle. Although Sutsong could contend against Shang Ying, what about the other members of the battle sword faction? This wasn't a battle on the same level. However, at this moment, a terrifying will gushed over from afar, cascading down onto the ground. After which, an aged voice filled with rage rang out. The royal sacred sect even annihilated their own subordinate powers. How cruel and merciless. No wonder the sacred prince Zaixian would do something as infuriating as capturing young maidens from the royal sacred region. This voice drifted down from the heavens, causing the countenances of those present to freeze. Their eyes involuntarily narrowed as they stared in the direction of the voice. Medicine Sovereign, what has the internal affairs of my royal sacred sect got to do with you? Within the royal sacred sect, a terrifying will gushed over, causing the experts of the royal sacred sect to tremble. It was none other than the sacred emperor. Evidently, the sacred emperor had sensed the arrival of the medicine sovereign. Both of them had already reached that level of cultivation. Their senses were naturally stronger than anyone else. The royal sacred sect proclaims themselves to be the hegemon of this world. Yet they actually dared to commit such an atrocious act. As a member of the royal sacred region, our medicine sovereign valley has the obligation to interfere. The voice of the medicine sovereign rang out once more. From afar, experts from the medicine sovereign valley could be seen flying over. The puppet in the lead was a powerful Xuanwu puppet with the medicine sovereign, and the rest standing on it. The surroundings were also filled with powerful puppets, an army of puppets. The silhouette of the sacred emperor also appeared. Both parties arrived in the air above the territory of the battle sword faction, staring at each other from afar. In that case, how do you want to interfere? The eyes of the sacred emperor were ice cold. A surge of pressure bore down, causing the entire space to feel a stifling pressure. This time around, it wasn't the sacred emperor's immortal sense but his actual self. Tell everyone to leave. The medicine sovereign calmly spoke. Impossible. The sacred emperor directly rejected. Since the royal sacred sect had already started to clean up their sect, how could they let them leave? Especially since the medicine sovereign and the rest were here, they couldn't let them leave. If not, where would the face of the royal sacred sect be? In that case, we can only fight. The medicine sovereign seemed to have long known that the sacred emperor wouldn't agree. How should we fight? If you interfere and deal with the people below, regardless of my royal sacred sect or your medicine sovereign valley, a large number of people would definitely die. The sacred emperor asked. At his and the medicine sovereign's level, killing celestial phenomenon ascendants was as easy as flipping their palms. If the two of them were to deal with the people below, they would be able to kill a large number of them. If that's the case, both their powers might end up in mutual destruction. Before one of us dies, we won't interfere with their battle. The medicine sovereign naturally had his reservations. Both of them didn't wish for everyone in their sect to be killed. In truth, the victor and loser between them was the deciding factor. Naturally, the prerequisite was that they had to kill the other party. If the medicine sovereign died, it would be a doomsday for the medicine sovereign valley. What about that puppet? The sacred emperor pointed to the Xuanwu beneath the medicine sovereign's feet. It won't take the initiative to attack those below you, but it can protect the experts of the medicine sovereign valley. The medicine sovereign replied. Fine, this seat wants to experience the strength of an undying old man like you. The sacred emperor laughed, his tone calm, and there was no hatred in his eyes. It was like he was sparring with old friends. As the two of them spoke, resplendent halos of light revolved around them, illuminating the entire space. Regardless of the sacred emperor or the medicine sovereign, their auras changed completely. They were now true immortals. That immortal halos of light seemed to originate from the bodies of immortals. Boom! A terrifying king chi gushed forth from the sacred emperor, as he punched out with his fist. A dazzling beam of immortal light shook the heavens and earth, directly piercing through space, transforming into a terrifying black hole that blasted towards the medicine sovereign. His control over his strength had already reached a perfect level. Although it was incomparably tyrannical, it didn't leak out at all, not wasting any energy at all. The medicine sovereign stabbed out with his finger as a beam of fiery light shot towards the terrifying attack. That beam of fiery light seemed ordinary, but at the instant it came into contact with the attack of the sacred emperor. A destructive aura gushed forth, transforming the entire space into a sea of flames. The medicine sovereign stood in the middle of that resplendent sea of flames, as though he was born from fire. Countless people in the surroundings felt their bodies burning up. Their clothes were about to be ignited, and their skin showed signs of cracking. They inclined their heads in shock as they stared at the flames in the air. Those were no longer ordinary flames, they were immortal flames. At the level of the sacred emperor and the medicine sovereign, their strength had already transformed to another level. Let's go up and fight. They won't be able to endure the aftershocks. The medicine sovereign spoke. After which, he soared up into the sky as the sacred emperor followed. The two of them directly soared up into the air, and in the blink of an eye, only 2 streaks of light remained. Faintly, one could see the destructive might cascading down from the sky, resembling streams of fire. Just a single strand of fire was enough to incinerate low-level celestial phenomenon ascendants. Those from the battle sword faction drew in a deep breath, feeling a sense of luck in their hearts. They managed to survive in this desperate situation. If not for the medicine sovereign and the experts from the medicine sovereign valley coming to their aid, the consequences would truly be unimaginable. But even if the experts from the medicine sovereign valley and their puppets arrived, they were still far too few in number when compared to the experts from the Royal Sacred Sect. The Royal Sacred Sect could simply use numbers to overwhelm them. The most powerful of the medicine sovereign valley were their puppets. Each of them was at the peak of the immortal realms. But this place was the headquarters of the Royal Sacred Sect. There were simply too many experts here. The experts from the medicine sovereign valley and the battle sword faction still felt immense pressure. Immortal ranked puppets couldn't take the initiative to attack, they were only allowed to defend. This was the agreement between the medicine sovereign and the sacred emperor. Each of them would take a step back, or they would perish together. At this moment, Qin Wentian was in the midst of a great rock puppet. He had long since familiarized himself with the structure of this puppet, and he couldn't help but to sigh in admiration at the Grandmaster who created this puppet. Creating a puppet was the most difficult task. The complexity of it even surpassed weaponsmithing. For a powerful puppet, every part of it was akin to a divine weapon, able to unleash immense might. Not only that, the puppet had to be in perfect harmony, allowing the person controlling the puppet to control it. The puppets Qin Wentian saw in the White Deer Institute before paled in comparison to the one he was controlling now. The disparity was simply too great. Within this puppet, there were countless runic formations that could be activated using one's will. It was easy to control, but how much power one could unleash would depend on one's familiarity with the puppet as well as one's control over it. Through the eyes of the golden rock puppet, Qin Wentian stared at the experts of the Royal Sacred Sect. The experts from the various factions should have all arrived. How ruthless! Just a little bit more and the battle sword faction would have been destroyed in their hands. Back then it was Zai Qiu who killed Qin instead of Qin who killed Zai Xian. The Royal Sacred Sect had let down the battle sword faction, causing a grudge to grow in their hearts. Now they even wanted to eradicate the battle sword faction, the hegemon of this world, tyrannical and tyrannical. Izzy. A raging wind gusted by. Qin Wentian controlled the great rock puppet to soar up into the clouds. The runic formations on the wings of the golden rock were activated as a terrifying gust of wind tore through the air, rushing towards the experts from the Violet Thunder sect. Nine Thunder's countenance changed when he saw this scene. He stared at the puppet rushing over. A puppet of this level is extremely taxing on Yuan meteor stones. Don't clash head-on with it. Let's tie it down and exhaust its energy. If we can destroy it, we will do so. Chapter 729. As the sound of Nine Thunder's voice faded, the golden rock puppet had already rushed over. Its speed was simply too fast. Without any sound or presence, faster than the speed of sound, resembling a beam of golden light. Its wings slashed out, sweeping towards the skies. Golden runic light flashed on the wings of the golden rock, wanting to tear apart the heavens. Pucci, an expert at the 5th level of celestial phenomenon, didn't even have time to evade. His body was directly slashed apart, dying instantly. Nine Thunder released his constellation, forming a lightning domain of destruction. This entire space seemed to be filled with countless pools of destructive lightning. Crackling sounds could be heard as the power contained within them reached a terrifying extent. This was also the reason why Qin Wentian could only use a puppet to fight. Although he had the ability to jump levels to fight, his cultivation base was after all only at the 1st level of celestial phenomenon. If he fought against peak-level ascendants, he would be easily killed. As the leader of the Violet Thunder sect, Nine Thunder had a cultivation base at the peak of celestial phenomenon. His constellation had already been refined to perfection. Not only did he have a complete astral domain, his destructive might was also extremely terrifying. The area of this lightning domain was simply too vast. There were many experts from the Violet Thunder sect within. All of them unleashed their energy as they stared at the golden rock. Golden light flashed. The body of the golden rock moved again. His wings were like 2 divine weapons, slicing through the void. Golden light filled the sky, and the pulsating runes on his wings were incomparably resplendent. Countless terrifying runes flickered at the same time, exuding a towering sharpness that seemed capable of slicing through everything. Chi-chi. Experts from the Violet Thunder sect died one after another. The wings of the golden rock were like the wings of a reaper, unstoppable. Kill. Nine Thunder howled in rage. Countless gigantic lightning swords shot out from the lightning pool towards the golden rock controlled by Qin Wentian, suppressing it from all directions, sealing off the golden rock's path of escape. BZ. The wings of the golden rock swept out horizontally, causing runes to fill the skies as they collided with the lightning swords, breaking them apart. Attack. Nine Thunder's voice was ice cold. How could the Medicine Sovereign have such a powerful puppet? If one's strength was weaker, they wouldn't even be able to survive the attacks of the golden rock puppet. The best method of combat was to stay away from it and attack from afar. However, the speed of this golden rock was simply too fast. Hence, he had to personally restrict the speed of the golden rock. One attack after another descended madly, transforming into destructive light that bombarded the flashing golden rock. However, there were only a few attacks that could actually shake the golden rock puppet. Its defensive power was also shockingly strong. It was unknown what material was used to forge it. Even Qin Wentian was wondering where the Medicine Sovereign got his hands on so many powerful puppets. Only an extremely powerful 6th-ranked puppet grandmaster would be able to create so many peak-tier 5th-ranked puppets. Thunderbolt chain. Nine Thunder coldly roared. Countless thunderbolt chains appeared from the lightning pool, emitting rumbling sounds as they shot towards the golden rock puppet. The chains shone with a towering amount of lightning. If it wasn't a puppet but a stellar martial cultivator instead, the power of the lightning would be sufficient to cause one's entire body to turn numb, causing their resistance to weaken and they would die without a burial. Nine Thunder was indeed a character from the core faction. At this moment, a terrifyingly sharp sword appeared in the claws of the golden rock. Faint blood-colored runes could be seen circulating around the sword as fresh blood dyed the sword crimson. The sword hummed softly as it trembled. Boom! A violent surge of demonic chi abruptly erupted forth as the sword expanded in size, transforming into a gigantic sword 3,000 meters long, radiating boundless demonic chi. The sharp claws of the golden rock puppet clenched onto the sword with immense might before abruptly slashing out. Walala, the chains of lightning were directly severed. The strength of the golden rock puppet, as well as the indomitable sharpness of the demon sword. Even if the demon sword wasn't willing to submit to Qin Wentian and unleash its full power, the sharpness of the sword could still be said to be able to penetrate anything. It's Qin Wentian. Qin Wentian is the one controlling this puppet. Upon seeing the appearance of the demon sword, someone exclaimed. Nine Thunder's eyes flashed with coldness as he stabbed towards the golden rock. The chains were all forcibly severed. The wings of the golden rock flapped once more as the 1,000-meter-long demon sword in its claws swept out frenziedly. Everywhere it passed by, the constellations of experts would be directly slashed apart, causing them to suffer heavy injuries or even die. Busy. A raging wind gusted by. Qin Wentian dashed towards Nine Thunder. With a flap of his wings, the demon sword stabbed towards the constellation formed by Nine Thunder. After which, with a howl of rage, a terrifying force slashed the demon sword into the constellation formed by Nine Thunder. "All get out of here!" Nine Thunder roared. A look of madness could be seen in his eyes. As the previous sect leader of the Violet Thunder sect, a leading character of the Violet Thunder sect, how could he not be able to kill a junior like Qin Wentian? Numerous experts were blasted out of Nine Thunder's constellation domain by Nine Thunder. After which, the lightning pool in the air erupted with an even more terrifying destructive might. The golden rock puppet was still using its supreme strength to slash apart Nine Thunder's constellation. Yet at this moment, Nine Thunder's eyes flickered with a frenzied light as he roared in rage, "Die for me!" As the sound of his voice faded, the violet lightning runes in the lightning pool erupted forth, akin to a volcano erupting. In an instant, the entire constellation erupted forth with a destructive might, capable of slaying even gods if they obstructed it. A vast domain was destroyed inch by inch as the destructive might enveloped the body of the golden rock puppet. Qin Wentian, who was in the golden rock puppet, stared in shock at this scene. A cold light flashed in his eyes as he controlled the puppet to slash out with the demon sword, causing a terrifying rift to appear in the air as the body of the golden rock puppet soared up into the skies. Rumble, rumble, rumble. Numerous terrifying shockwaves blasted into the golden rock puppet. Qin Wentian, who was inside, was also trembling violently. However, the golden rock still managed to rush out. Its perfect body was still in perfect condition, causing Nine Thunder to turn ashen. What material was this puppet made of? Even if the body isn't destroyed, the divine inscriptions within should have been destroyed. Nine Thunder's countenance was ice cold. Such a powerful attack, although the golden rock puppet was perfectly forged, it was impossible for the divine inscriptions to be as indestructible as the body. At this moment, the golden rock puppet floated in the air. Qin Wentian was in the midst of repairing the divine inscriptions. Although he had no way to inscribe such a powerful formation, it wasn't a problem for him to repair it. Even if he couldn't repair it to the same level as before, the power of the inscriptions wouldn't be too far off. The entire territory of the Battlesword faction was in a state of chaos. The ground was already riddled with holes as numerous buildings were destroyed by the shockwaves. The experts of the Royal Sacred Sect had the absolute advantage in terms of numbers, while the Medicine Sovereign Valley still had to rely on the Golden Rock Puppet to fight. The experts of the Medicine Sovereign Valley had to surround the Golden Rock Puppet, using the attacks of the Golden Rock Puppet as cover. If not, once they broke away from the Golden Rock Puppet, they would be easily surrounded. That immortal-ranked Xuanwu puppet stood in the center, occasionally protecting the experts of the Medicine Sovereign Valley, causing the experts of the Royal Sacred Sect to grit their teeth in hatred. However, when their attacks landed on the Xuanwu puppet, it was like scratching an itch. They had no way to shake it. Although this gigantic immortal-ranked puppet didn't participate in the battle, it still gave the Royal Sacred Sect an immense sense of pressure. Qin Wentian coldly glanced at Nine Thunder from within the Golden Rock Puppet. His silhouette flickered once more, transforming into a terrifying beam of golden light. Nine Thunder's countenance changed, turning ashen. He could still fight? Rapidly retreating, Nine Thunder actually avoided a head-on clash with the Golden Rock Puppet. The Golden Rock Puppet coldly glanced at him, its body arcing through the air in a beautiful arc as it slaughtered the other experts of the Violet Thunder sect. The demon sword slashed through the air, no one could do anything to it. "Gather together!" Qin Wentian roared. The Golden Rock Puppet slaughtered its way through, moving towards the puppet army. The experts of the Medicine Sovereign Valley also started to gather. Although their numbers were small, their defenses and attacks were strong. Once they gathered together, the destructive might they exuded would be even more terrifying. They could become the vanguard of the Medicine Sovereign Valley, slaughtering everything in their path. Very swiftly, the puppets and experts of the Medicine Sovereign Valley gathered in the airspace above the Xuanwu tortoise. The experts of the Royal Sacred Sect also gathered in a frenzy. The army of puppets in the air had a might that could crush the heavens and earth. With a single glance, it was simply too terrifying. Get into formation. Vice Sect Leader Yen of the core faction commanded. Instantly, the experts of the various factions started to get into formation. The Royal Sacred Sect had governed the world for tens of thousands of years, and there were all sorts of experts in the sect, including grandmasters in the field of formations. There were a few super powerful formations in the sect that could gather the strength of the entire sect to activate. Normally, they wouldn't even use it, but today, because of the heavy losses they suffered from the puppets of the Medicine Sovereign Valley, they had no choice but to activate it. Careful, every faction in the Royal Sacred Sect has a combination formation that's extremely powerful. The leader of the Battle Sword Sect, Su Tsang, reminded as a look of wariness flashed in his eyes. As the sound of his voice faded, the various factions had already started to get into formation. The core faction of the Royal Sacred Sect took on the form of a dragon. A resplendent light flashed as the form of a 9-winged heavenly dragon appeared, incomparably malevolent. The experts of the Violet Thunder Sect took on the form of a gigantic Bat King. Lightning illuminated the area, and under the illumination of the boundless lightning, everyone could clearly see that it was a terrifying lightning bat dragon. The experts of the Great Earth Sect took on the form of a demonic ox. When the terrifying light from the Great Earth Sect radiated out, the gigantic Kuei ox appeared, shaking the heavens and earth. Just that stance alone was sufficient to shake the hearts of the spectators. Each faction had their own 10 ferocious beasts as the formation, floating in the air. At this moment, their numbers were even fewer compared to the puppets, but their stance was sufficient to cause the hearts of the spectators to tremble. Kuei-ox formation. Zai Yin controlled the grand formation as he coldly snorted. Instantly, the Great Earth Sect's celestial phenomenon ascendants transformed into a gigantic Kuei-ox that rushed out in rage, howling through the air as boundless shadows of the Kuei-ox frenziedly rushed towards the experts of the Medicine Sovereign Valley. Terrifying rumbling sounds echoed out. The puppets didn't move at all. But when the 10,000-meter Kuei-ox rushed over, the heaven-shaking and earth-shattering aura it exuded was sufficient to shatter the guts of people. The Xuanwu puppet moved. Its gigantic body soared up into the air, using its indestructible turtle shell to defend against the Kuei-ox's charge. A thunderous boom rang out as a fearsome shockwave swept through the air. The puppets and experts of the Medicine Sovereign Valley were all forced back as a gigantic crater appeared on the ground. Just a single strike was sufficient to cause the hearts of everyone to tremble. The supreme formation formed by the Royal Sacred Sect was a true 1,000-man grand formation. How terrifying was its might! Even the immortal-ranked Xuanwu puppet felt numb from the impact. Chapter 730. Zai Yan's countenance turned cold when he saw this. He spoke again. Bat Dragon Formation. As soon as he finished speaking, the hideous and extremely terrifying Lightning Bat Dragon Formation was activated. Incomparably dazzling lightning flashed wildly between the heavens and the earth. The ferocious Lightning Bat Dragon swooped down, bringing with it a violent airflow that could destroy the heavens and the earth. Disciples of the Battle Sword faction formed the sky-splitting ferocious formation. Su Tsang roared. The sky-splitting ferocious formation was also one of the 10 ferocious grand formations, and its might was extremely strong. Back then, the Royal Sacred Sect imparted formations to the various factions, and the one they were taught was none other than the sky-splitting ferocious formation. But before the formation was completed, the terrifying lightning bat dragon swooped down from the air. The wings of the bat dragon flickered with incomparably fearsome fluctuations of lightning. As the phoenix descended, the puppets instinctively rushed forward to defend against the onslaught of lightning. The Xuanwu puppet soared up into the air once more, after which, it opened its mouth and spat out a stream of coldness energy. A surge of immortal energy gushed forth, shooting towards the air, protecting this space. Kill them all! Zai Yin coldly snorted. As the sound of his voice faded, The 10 ferocious grand formation formed by the various great sects slammed down. The lightning bat dragon at the very front was enveloped by boundless lightning, shattering the cold nether immortal chi. However, the head of the lightning bat dragon showed signs of being sealed by a layer of frost. The gigantic tail of the Xuanwu turtle abruptly lashed out, bringing with it an incomparably violent might as it collided with the lightning bat dragon. Rumbling sounds rang out unceasingly as the Xuanwu turtle was forced back once more. The gigantic tail of the Xuanwu turtle cracked open from the impact. This super powerful grand formation could even threaten the immortal ranked puppets. At this moment, all the members of the 10 ferocious grand formations slammed down. The coral unicorn, scarlet flame golden swanny, ice armor horn devil dragon. That terrifying stance, that unparalleled might, caused people to feel stifled. Finally, the experts of the battle sword faction gathered into their formation. The horn of the sky-splitting ferocious lion was incomparably malevolent, resembling a peerlessly sharp sword. Puppets, protect us. Grand formation, kill the enemies. The Xuanwu turtle commanded. Wentian, go to the front of the grand formation and use the demon's sword as a spear. All right. Qin Wentian nodded, after which his silhouette flickered as he flew towards the sky-splitter horned horn formation. Boundless energy gushed forth. Suitsong directly told him of the crux of the formation. Because only Qin Wentian himself was needed, Qin Wentian rapidly melded into it. An instant later, the demon sword became the core of the sky-splitter horned horn as boundless sword might converged upon it. At this instant, the demon sword gleamed with a terrifying demonic light, shooting up into the skies. Boom boom boom. In the air, the sounds of explosions rang out unceasingly. The 10 ferocious grand formation activated by the royal sacred sect clashed against the puppets. Other than the Xuanwu puppet which could withstand the impact, the other puppets were all flung through the air. Those controlling the puppets were all heavily injured. Their divine inscriptions shattered. Kill. Qin Wentian's eyes were bloodshot. The sky-splitting centipede roared and galloped in the sky. Its sword stepped on the ground and charged toward the huge lightning bat dragon. Die. Those from the battle sword faction frenziedly channeled their boundless sword chi. Only when the same type of energy was condensed within the grand formation would they be able to unleash the strongest might. The lightning bat dragon formed by the Violet Thunder sect was formed by the power of thunder. The Kuei ox formed by the Great Earth sect was formed by the power of the earth, and the sky-splitting centipede formed by the battle sword faction was formed by the power of the sword. The horn of the sky-splitting centipede transformed into a gigantic sword that was over 100,000 meters long, slashing towards the lightning bat dragon. Piercing sounds rang out as the incomparably baleful horn actually pierced right through. Kill. Those from the battle sword faction had completely gone mad. Since the royal sacred sect wanted to annihilate them, they might as well annihilate them together. Chi-chi. The demon sword's horn pierced into the body of the lightning bat dragon, penetrating deeper and deeper. Many experts coughed out blood as they died instantly. And this time, an earth-shattering roar was heard. The Kuei ox and the red flame golden swanny beast attacked the sky-shattering Ao at the same time. The sky-shattering Ao swung its horn wildly, stabbing at the void. Die. The other grand formations all rushed over, causing the eyes of those from the battle sword sect to turn red. The Xuanwu puppet once again rushed over to protect them, causing rumbling sounds to reverberate through the air, causing cracks to appear on the sky-shattering turtle formation. Kill. Qin Wentian and Suitsong controlled the grand formation. They controlled the demon sword and slashed it towards the Kuei ox ferocious formation. Those from the battle sword faction all went berserk when they saw this scene. Disregarding everything, they frenziedly channeled their strength and finally, a piercing sound rang out as the incomparably tyrannical defense was slashed apart. Rumble. But at the same time, the sky-shattering centipede also suffered from the destructive attacks of the other formations. Finally, the grand formation broke apart as countless experts from the Great Earth sect fell in different directions, suffering heavy casualties. Kill him. Ziyin pointed his finger at the golden rock puppet. Momentarily, The ice armor horned devil dragon dashed towards Qin Wentian as a destructive aura gushed over, capable of crushing the heavens and earth. Qin Wentian was in the center of the grand formation. Even the puppet was unable to move due to the impact. Staring at the incoming ice armor horned devil dragon, his countenance stiffened. At this moment, a beautiful maiden clad in phoenix feathers walked out from another puppet. Her silhouette flickered as she walked to the side of the golden rock puppet. Inclining her head, she stared at the incoming grand formation as her phoenix feathers spread out, transforming into the shadow of a phoenix that enveloped both herself and the golden rock puppet. Qingcheng. Qin Wentian's countenance froze. Through the eyes of the golden rock, he saw a gentle smile on Qingcheng's face. It was as though as long as she was with him, there was nothing to be afraid of. Go! Qin Wentian roared. Staring at the terrifying grand formation descending from the skies, Qin Wentian's countenance turned pale. Finally, a thunderous boom rang out as the grand formation descended. Countless gazes turned their gazes over. That incomparably terrifying grand formation was sufficient to crush the petite body of Mo Qingcheng and the golden rock puppet into smithereens. Is she dead? The gazes of the crowd froze. The most dazzling heaven chosen of the royal sacred region, the purest and most beautiful maiden, a celestial couple, had died in the hands of the hegemon of the royal sacred sect just like that? The ice-armored horned devil dragon lifted its gigantic foot. The crowd only saw that the wings of the ice-armored horned devil dragon were still there, as though they had transformed into a sturdy barrier of light. Mo Qingcheng and the golden rock puppet were still inside, completely unharmed. In the golden rock puppet, Qin Wentian's eyes flickered. He froze for a moment as he stared at Mo Qingcheng with a teardrop in her eyes. It was as though she was prepared to die together with him. However, they didn't die. The phoenix feather robe protected them. This robe. Qin Wentian felt great waves of shock in his heart. Even the immortal-ranked black tortoise puppet would be forced back by such an attack. Yet this robe actually protected them, not moving an inch. This is the wedding gift mother gave me. Tears flowed down Mo Qingcheng's eyes. She didn't know what to feel in her heart. Mother. Qin Wentian also felt a sense of sourness in his heart. This robe wasn't an ordinary robe. It was an immortal-ranked treasure. The ice armor-horned devil dragon was enraged. It lifted its gigantic foot and stomped madly on the screen of light, as though it was trampling on Mo Qingcheng's back. The rumbling tremors from the impact gushed into the ice armor-horned devil dragon. Qin Wentian's eyes turned bloodshot when he saw this scene. His eyes were incomparably malevolent, as though his entire body was burning with raging flames. Boundless resplendent runic light flashed as the candle flame in his body trembled violently. A dazzling halo appeared around him, resembling both immortal light and divine light. Immortal-ranked weapon? That's an immortal-ranked treasure. Was it given to Mo Qingcheng by the medicine sovereign? Countless experts in the air stared at the ground. The ice armor horned devil dragon was a grand formation formed by the experts of the Blood Devil Palace. Its attacks were extremely powerful, yet it couldn't even break a single piece of robe. This treasure was too terrifying. Greed appeared in the hearts of many from the royal sacred sect. If they had such a robe, how strong would their defense be? Crush her. Ziyin commanded. The ice armor horned devil dragon continued its frenzied attacks, as though it wanted to crush Mo Qingcheng into pieces no matter what. Finally, Mo Qingcheng coughed as a trace of blood seeped out of her mouth. That trembling might still manage to seep into the immortal-ranked treasure, injuring the fragile Mo Qingcheng. Her strength was simply too weak. Just a trace of the trembling might was enough to injure her. Qin Wentian chanted an ancient incantation. Within the golden rock, boundless immortal light radiated from his body, unceasingly flashing. Droplets of fresh blood flowed down the claws of the golden rock, seeping into the demon sword. Boundless runic light danced within the demon sword, causing it to emit clanking sounds as it trembled violently. The demon sword trembled louder and louder, before abruptly shrinking in size. With a swoosh, it entered the body of the golden rock puppet, landing on Qin Wentian's palm. Qin Wentian brandished the demon sword, and slashed it towards the golden rock puppet. That invincible golden rock puppet was actually sliced apart as Qin Wentian walked out from within. The demon sword trembled violently, as though it wanted to break through the heavens. Qingcheng, let me out. Qin Wentian inclined his head and stared at the air, his countenance cold. Mo Qingcheng started. The demon sword transformed into a resplendent screen of light, enveloping Qin Wentian within. The boundless runic light illuminated Qin Wentian, making him look like an immortal. This halo of light was actually somewhat similar to the halo of light radiating from the medicine sovereign and sacred emperor earlier. With an intention of her will, Mo Qingcheng let Qin Wentian out. The demon sword instantly expanded to 1,000 meters in length, emitting a heaven-shaking roar. Boundless divine light circulated around the sword, as though it had a life of its own. You still dare to come out? Die. The ice armor horned devil dragon lunged towards Qin Wentian, only to see Qin Wentian abruptly slashing out with the demon sword in his hand. With a piercing sound, the demon sword sliced through the body of the ice armor horned devil dragon like a hot knife through butter, directly splitting it into two. Chapter 731. The Ice Armor Horned Devil Dragon formation was formed by experts from the Blood Devil Palace. Its attack power was extremely tyrannical, and even when facing against the immortal-ranked Xuanwu puppet, it wouldn't be at a disadvantage. But at this moment, it was actually cleaved apart by the demon sword. This sudden scene shocked everyone. There were still a few other fearsome formations in the air, and each of them had over 1,000 experts within them. Their gazes were all fixed on this scene as shock filled their hearts. Mo Qingcheng used her phoenix robes to defend against the frenzied trampling of the ice armor horned devil dragon. As for Qin Wentian, who walked out from the Blood Devil Palace, he used his sword to cleave the ice armor horned devil dragon apart. This couple had once again shocked everyone. That demon sword. The gazes of the crowd stared at the gigantic demon sword that was a few thousand meters long. Resplendent runic lights circulated around the body of the demon sword, resembling ancient characters that exuded a simple and unadorned aura. What are those runes? I don't understand them at all. Ziyin stared at the demon sword. Being able to unleash such a terrifying might, it clearly didn't belong to Qin Wentian himself. In that case, it could only be the power of the demon sword. It was as though the demon sword had been awakened, unleashing a heaven-shaking might. Numerous ancient runes, I wonder where they belong to. The hearts of the crowd trembled. The runes on the body of the demon sword were like immortal talismans, illuminating the heavens and earth, activating the unexcelled might of the demon sword. The ice armor horned devil dragon formation was shattered, and the group of people within the formation were all killed. There were also many who were killed by the sword chi. The number of casualties was even more tragic than when the Violet Thunder sect formed the Lightning Bat Dragons. Less than 1/5 of those who survived were left alive. Corpses littered the ground below, and the ground of the Battle Sword faction continued to split apart, resembling a natural graveyard, directly burying the corpses within. This battle was simply too intense. Up till now, 3 fearsome formations of the Royal Sacred Sect had been destroyed. The Lightning Bat Dragons formed by the experts of the Violet Thunder sect, the Ice-Armored Devil Dragons formed by the Blood Devil Palace, and the Kuei Ox Grand Formation formed by the experts of the Great Earth sect. The number of people who died in this battle far surpassed any other battles the Royal Sacred Sect had ever fought in the Royal Sacred Region. This battle would definitely be recorded in the history of the Royal Sacred Region. Although the casualties on the side of the Medicine Sovereign Valley's side were lesser, they were similarly in a miserable state. After all, their strength was much weaker compared to the rest. They only had experts from the Medicine Sovereign Valley, the Battle Sword faction, and the Battle Sword faction. Right now, many of the puppets had been destroyed, and the experts from the Battle Sword faction had also suffered heavy casualties due to the destruction of their formation. Naturally, the Royal Sacred Sect didn't expect that this battle would end so tragically. Initially, they thought that they would be able to destroy their opponents with ease. What was even more terrifying was that this battle had yet to end. Qin Wentian, whose entire body was bathed in immortal light as resplendent runes circulated around him, as well as the dazzling demon sword, seemed to have fused together as one. Inclining his head, he stared at the experts from the Royal Sacred Sect. Qin Wentian's gaze seemed to be able to incinerate the souls of his opponents, as though wanting to split apart the heavens with a single sword strike. Busy. The demon sword danced in the air. Qin Wentian roared in rage as he lifted the demon sword high up and abruptly cleaved downwards. Those lucky survivors of the Blood Devil Palace all turned pale. Qin Wentian didn't intend to spare their lives, he wanted their lives. Kill. A terrifying killing intent flickered in Qin Wentian's eyes. Earlier, the experts of the Blood Devil Palace transformed into ice-horned devil dragons that trampled on Mo Qingqing unceasingly. Now he wanted to wipe out all of them. An incomparably deep crevice appeared in the ground. The experts of the Blood Devil Palace were instantly torn apart the moment they came into contact with the sword light that was imbued with runic inscriptions. After this sword strike, not even a tenth of them survived. The upper echelons of the Blood Devil Palace of the Royal Sacred Sect were all annihilated. It was too tragic. Back then, the Pill Emperor Hall was destroyed by Qin Wentian wielding the demon sword. The Blood Devil Palace dared to treat Mo Qingqing in such a manner. Yet in the blink of an eye, they were annihilated. Their situation was even more miserable compared to the Pill Emperor Hall back then. For this grudge, Qin Wentian had already taken revenge on the spot. Demonic qi gushed forth as the demon sword was lifted up once more. Qin Wentian spat out the word kill, causing despair to fill the hearts of those from the Blood Devil Palace. Qin Wentian still wanted to kill them all? Did he want to kill them all? Still not acting? Some of the surviving experts from the Blood Devil Palace inclined their heads and stared at Zai Yan and the others in the air. Those fearsome formations hadn't been broken yet. They were actually standing there in a daze, watching them die. Should they act? At this moment, who would dare to touch the sharpness of the demon sword? Although the power of the demon sword has been activated, it's definitely only for a short period of time. If we attack together and kill Qin Wentian, the demon sword would be a dead object. Zai Yan's eyes flickered with trepidation, as well as greed. This demon sword was definitely an immortal rank divine weapon, or maybe even higher. Qin Wentian inclined his head and stared at the sky, after which, he soared up into the air, and at this moment the demon sword didn't seem so heavy anymore. With the demon sword in his hands, he soared up into the air, exuding an aura that caused even the heavens and earth to lose their color. Those fearsome formations were all staring at Qin Wentian with trepidation. Zai Yan and the others from the core faction of the Royal Sacred Sect had also formed their own formations, yet they were still ordered to act. Although they belonged to the Royal Sacred Sect, they weren't fools. For those who weren't from the core faction, the Royal Sacred Sect wouldn't feel any heartache no matter how many of them died. In the eyes of these people, only the members of the core faction represented the true Royal Sacred Sect. As for the 9 great sects and the 2 empires, they could all be replaced. Regardless of the Great Earth Sect or the Battle Sword Sect, they only needed to announce this to the world, and there would be other powers to replace them. Hence, none of them dared to act recklessly. At this moment, Qin Wentian, who was wielding the demon sword, increased his speed as he rushed towards the experts from the core faction. Retreat. Xiangying was extremely cautious. He gave the order to retreat first. But after they formed their formations, their attacks and defenses were all extremely strong, but their speed was actually weaker. Their tails were too big, and it was hard to control them. The demon sword slashed over. The sword light pierced through the air, slashing downwards. Xiangying howled in rage as the strongest attack of the formation blasted towards the demon sword. But under the might of that supreme runic light, all attacks were useless. Xiangying explosively retreated, directly escaping from the formation. The sword slashed down, slashing into the formation, destroying everything. Under this strike, it was unknown how many experts from the core faction of Grand Shang died. Qin Wentian rushed up once more, wanting to continue his slaughter. Disperse the formation, retreat separately. When his energy is depleted, we will kill our way back. Zai Yan also knew that there was nothing he could do when he saw this scene. He could only temporarily evade Qin Wentian's attacks. Qin Wentian definitely wouldn't be able to maintain his berserk state for too long. As the sound of Zai Yan's voice faded, the formation instantly dispersed. All the experts fled, evading Qin Wentian's attacks. After all, Qin Wentian's cultivation base was one of the weaker ones and his speed wasn't fast. It was impossible for him to catch up to these people one by one. He halted in the air and brandished the demon sword once more, slashing out at the fleeing figures in all directions. Some of the more unlucky ones were directly slain in midair. Very swiftly, the experts of the royal sacred sect had all fled, leaving behind only those who were heavily injured. Such a bizarre scene caused those from the Medicine Sovereign Valley and the Battle Sword faction to be dumbfounded. They stared at the silhouette of the young man wielding the demon sword in the air. The eyes of the old ancestor of the Battle Sword sect, Sootsong, didn't move. He simply stared at the majestic back view of the white-robed young man. When he was young, that silhouette already had the ability to support the heavens and earth. Brat, you will definitely surpass all the geniuses of the Royal Sacred Region, reaching a height unreachable by the predecessors. The Royal Sacred Sect is merely a stepping stone on your path of growth. I'm anticipating the day when you truly unleash your brilliance, the old ancestor of the Battle Sword sect mused. At this moment, he involuntarily recalled the first time he met Qin Wentian. At that time, he wanted to accept Qin Wentian as a disciple but was rejected. At that time, he treated Qin Wentian as an interesting junior. But now he no longer treated Qin Wentian as a junior. There would definitely be a day when his brilliance would be even more dazzling than the stars in the night sky. At this moment, two terrifying auras descended from the air. Two Immortal Foundation experts stood in the air above them. The Sacred Emperor of the Royal Sacred Sect and the Medicine Sovereign stood in opposition. Although the two of them weren't looking at the situation below, they could clearly see that the countenance of the Sacred Emperor was extremely unsightly to behold. Old undying fellow, have you left the Royal Sacred Sect before? Where did your immortal arts come from? The Sacred Emperor coldly asked. He became an immortal earlier than the Medicine Sovereign, and was naturally more familiar with the cultivation realms. However, he actually couldn't do anything to the Medicine Sovereign. The cultivation art of the Medicine Sovereign seemed to be even more powerful compared to the immortal arts he cultivated. What does this have to do with you? Although I can't do anything to you, you can't do anything to me as well. Seems like neither of us can kill the other. The Medicine Sovereign coldly spoke. This was also the reason why they restrained the Sacred Emperor from acting against those of a lower cultivation base. Because both sides couldn't do anything to the other. Once the Medicine Sovereign killed those from the Royal Sacred Sect, the Sacred Emperor could also kill those from the Medicine Sovereign Valley. Let's end things here. The voice of the Sacred Emperor was cold. He glanced at Qin Wentian and those from the Battle Sword faction below as he continued. Those from the Battle Sword faction betrayed the Royal Sacred Sect. All of you shall be annihilated. Your Royal Sacred Sect already wants to annihilate us, yet you still don't want us to betray? Sootsong stared at the Sacred Emperor. There was no longer much respect in his eyes. Just wait for your death. The Sacred Emperor coldly snorted. When he said the words end things here, he already admitted defeat. Today, in the territory of the Royal Sacred Sect, the Medicine Sovereign Valley actually brought away those from the Battle Sword faction. This would definitely be recorded in the history of the Royal Sacred Sect. Retreat. The Medicine Sovereign commanded. The experts from the Medicine Sovereign Valley and the Battle Sword faction started to retreat. Qin Wentian glanced at the Sacred Emperor in the air before he slowly walked up to the back of the Xuanwu puppet. The runic light on the demon sword vanished as it shrank in size, and was kept by Qin Wentian. As for Qin Wentian, he closed his eyes and directly fell into a deep slumber. Wentian. Mo Qingqing came to the side of Qin Wentian. He's already fighting beyond his limits. The amount of energy he's using isn't something he should be able to unleash at his current level. Let him have a good sleep. The Medicine Sovereign walked to the side of Qin Wentian. Mo Qingqing nodded her head and didn't disturb Qin Wentian. She quietly sat down beside him as the experts from the Royal Sacred Sect retreated. Very swiftly, the news of this battle spread through the entire Sacred Royal City, causing unprecedented waves of commotion. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.